Yo,
Oh,
we're live.
boy, oh boy. Welcome, everybody. It is Thursday night. I am hot because I just got off the freeway. It is extremely hot here. So I am red faced. I am sweating and I'm dying, absolutely dying, listening to these closing arguments today. We are the home of your much better than the FTC attorneys ever will be duo of myself, Pong, and of course, my brother from another Mav. But this is PM of the PM, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I don't even know where we're going to start. Mav and I were just laughing behind the scenes. We have no idea how this is going to go today. But I do know it's going to be more coherent than any argument that the government has against this deal, the ABK acquisition, because my God, I've never heard so many boomers that have never picked up a controller in their life talk about video games and try to explain complex ideas. Because guess what, folks? We're getting Elder Scrolls 16 in 2026, by the way.
Not only that, but Ghost Loop was was also a game that came out. And also Final Fantasy 6
came this year.
Yep. But did you know that we didn't get Final Fantasy last year on Xbox as well?
Right. Yeah. So and that was Beth from the Microsoft side.
Yeah, that's the Microsoft.
So, this is where we're at, folks. Yeah. This deal has been mind-blowing. Matt, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but do you remember all the conversations we had? And a lot of people did poo-poo us originally about how much information we would actually get out of this case. Like when we talked about why, we were obviously fascinated by the ABK deal from the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, again, biggest deal in history for the video game industry, Microsoft's history. So that was a key factor. And then we talked about this is going to shape the future of video games potentially down the road and what this industry looks like, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, that we're going to look back at this case. But we also said, because this goddamn industry is so secretive, we never get peeks behind the curtain. And people were like, yeah, but you're really not going to get a whole lot out of this. They're going to redact all the documents. There's not going to be a whole, maybe a couple things.
They did such a great job at that.
Yeah, right. And here we are for the past 2 weeks, getting bomb after bomb, getting insider knowledge, finding out about how the business actually works, which a lot of it we were spot on with. A lot of us that, watch this industry kind of knew, but we've got factual information now on the stand, witness testimony about this stuff. This deal is the best gift we could have ever gotten. I'm absolutely enthralled with this, but man, I've never been so frustrated as I was today, just now, trying to listen to these closing arguments. And it's an open conversation closing argument if you haven't been listening to it, which means it's not your standard courtroom TV drama where you get to see the FTC stand up there and give a soapbox speech for 15, 20 minutes about all the reasons why their case is so strong. And then Microsoft's attorneys get to respond. No. This is the FTC giving their side first, but the judge can interrupt them. And then also Microsoft's own attorneys are allowed to respond to certain things as well during their closing argument. So this is like unbelievable. But anyways, I had a whole nother thing I was going to talk about, but maybe we'll get into it later. This is throwing me totally off. So let's get to my brother from another. Let's get to the man who owns Fun Speculation Network. Let's get to the man who knows this industry and has had plenty of rants, plenty of fun about all of this. And we're going to talk about one of those things that we had a lot of conversations about, which was the Christmas wish list, the acquisition season, what that looks like. But Mav, how the hell's your week been, man? I know you've been busy as hell, but what you been doing, man? Any gaming, anything?
Just Diablo, bro. I actually been waking up kind of early to get some Diablo in this past week and been going to bed really early lately. So it's been a different, just I've been crazy busy with work and stuff. But man, Diablo's so good, bro. I hit level 83.
Congrats.
Running those nightmare dungeons solo now, right?
Nice.
Seeing how that goes, perfecting the build, right? Other than that, dabbled in a little bit of Fortnite. I tried a match of Warzone. I also got Army of Ruin.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I got that when for some reason I couldn't get into Diablo. I was getting frustrated. Yeah. So I got Army of Ruin, which is an awesome game. It's like Vampire Survivors in every way, pretty much. It's like a copycat, pretty much, of Vampire Survivors, which is pretty damn awesome. I really like that game. $7.99, so it's a cheap entry type game, and sometimes it's nice to have these small games just to dive into. But other than that, man, I've just been relishing in FTC versus Microsoft glory the past week, and it is greatness. It is absolute greatness. Everything I hoped it ever could be and more.
Yes.
I've been enjoying it. It's entertaining. It's to listen to. As a gamer, I think, like, if you're not in the gaming space, or like if you don't really follow or have a lot of knowledge on these kind of things, maybe this would be like boring to listen to. You don't understand what they're talking about. But for like people like us that are like super invested and we know all these things like the back of our hand, and we understand it so well that listening to this stuff is like entertaining in a very cringy way, because there's so much misinformation and false information that's put out there, mostly by the FTC as well. And it's I do have to say though, before we say hello to you as well, that I think the judge is doing a great job, regardless of what decision she ends up coming to here. I think the way she's been conducting the case the past week has been pretty admirable from her side. She can tell she's trying to get to the gist of what's going on, asking the right questions. Way better. She's getting more information that's important to this case than the FTC is trying to provide. So I think she's been doing great. But besides that, man, I am curious how it's been going for you, sir.
Yeah, so work is getting extremely busy. I've been coming home at 9:30 and sitting down and trying to get in some gaming. I have played a few nights this week with Steel on Diablo, a couple nights this week. Last night I was so burnt out, I didn't even want to play Diablo last night. I actually turned on Diablo. Is simply fantastic. I'm level 79 now, so I'm right behind you. I got some work to do on my build, trying to figure it out, trying to get the right pieces. But overall, again, the game is fantastic. My game of the year right now until September 1st, by far. This is it's just so awesome. Blizzard did such a great job. And so last night I actually popped into both Bramble and Fist, the new games that just dropped into Game Pass. Both titles are I played each one for about an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour each one last night. Just wanted to try them out, get the feel for both of them. Fist is the one that was on PlayStation, if you guys remember. Came out about a little over a year ago, I think it was. Indie developed game, the rabbit with the giant robot hand that just dropped into Game Pass. Awesome platformer. Now, I'm not the biggest platformer anymore. You guys will hear me speak on this. I don't purposely play platformers because I just don't like them anymore. But I got to say, this one has a little something to it. It's by no means perfect. It is an indie title. There are little things to it, but my God, it's kind of a cool story and it's fun. And I guess that's really what matters at the end of the day. So I was having fun with Fist last night. And then Bramble oozes atmosphere. Yeah. It is like you just stepped into a fairy tale world that you were just actually dropped into a fairy tale world. Absolutely incredible. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say the graphics are like, cutting edge, but what I'm gonna say is how they present the graphics and the way that they use draw distance and focus and lighting and the realistic feel of the forest around you and the different environments that you're in. It feels like you got dropped into a storybook. And I enjoyed the hell out of what I was playing last night, honestly. It reminds me of, games like Inside and those kind of games where it's kind of a linear path, but they do change perspectives. You do have some jumping to it, obviously, but they change the perspective on you. So go 2D, sometimes you'll be 3D kind of environment. And as you travel through this world, you meet like little gnomes and all this kind of stuff. And there's some basic puzzles that I had to start doing to the point where I got to. But Bramble, I suggest everybody definitely download and try it and see if it's for you. So that's all I've done this week for the most part. Otherwise, it's been work trying to keep up on this case as much as possible, trying to listen as much as possible. And I'm not listening, obviously I'm reading Foss and I'm reading, Flory Mueller and everybody who's covering this case, trying to stay up to date. But my God, the information flow has been Unbelievable. This is like a dam broke open, and every day it's a flood of something new, crazy. And it's been fun. It has been a lot of fun. This is exactly what we thought it could be, Mav, but it has actually exceeded even what I thought we'd hear out of this thing. It's been crazy. And again, listening to the FTC flounder day after day, they've had a couple of strong moments, especially the past couple of days. They've done better. But my God, you would think that if this case is so damn important, that this is like the highest priority you got to stop Microsoft, that you would show up a little prepared, that you'd be ready to answer some basic questions from the judge.
Yeah.
No, not at all. This is our government, folks. This is government waste. This is government overreach. This is all of it. Everything bad you've heard is now showing up in this case with the FTC. It's why I hate this type of stuff. Sure, there has to be some regulation at times. Some regulation can be good, but my God, when they try to change regulation and try to change laws on their own, this is what it looks like, folks. It is a bunch of grasping at straws, throwing shit against the wall, hoping something sticks, and then acting like you actually proved something. And then standing up there proud that you just wasted millions of dollars of taxpayer money and say, yeah, we got them.
Yeah.
We showed you Microsoft is bad and they're going to foreclose.
Well, partial, just partially foreclose. It's all that matters here. If there's a question that they might have a Christmas skin in Call of Duty, like if
that's what Sony's had for years.
If they have a Christmas skin for Call of Duty, a Christmas character, it's a harm to consumers, right?
It's different, Matt.
If the partially foreclosing the industry is releasing exclusive Christmas characters for Call of Duty, then you know what? Sony's been partially foreclosing the industry for years,
but it's different.
It's different. How? I don't understand.
Because Microsoft could do the same thing if they want to spend their money in that way. But because Sony can't spend money like Microsoft can to buy publishers, Mal, it's different.
But Sony bought a publisher. They bought Bungie. So why?
But they can't buy one like Activision.
Oh, it's different because there's only a few games in the entire history of the world ever that have been cross-play and cross multiplayer and multi-platform. That's what they said, right? So wasn't Bungie and Destiny one of those games?
Yes, but they failed to mention that.
Oh, interesting.
Because they probably don't even know, to be honest.
And there's obviously a lot more games than the history of the world.
Oh my God. And yes, Matt, to your point about the judge, she is doing her best as somebody who also doesn't understand about the industry. She did gain a baseline knowledge from the gamers lawsuit, which is good because I can't imagine what this would sound like without her previous experience with that case that gave her a baseline knowledge. But she is doing the best with what she's got. And I think that they did point it out correctly that this case is so complex. And this industry is so different from any other industry. We've talked about that, Mav, haven't we? We've talked about this, how this industry is not like any other type of industry. And it's been flying under the radar this whole time. So now all of a sudden people have to look at this industry and they have no clue what's going on. And they have no clue how to explain basic concepts from an economic standpoint, business standpoint, or competition standpoint. They lose it because this industry is so complex. And they were correct in saying that because they were trying to bring up cases. Both Microsoft attorneys and FTC attorneys were trying to bring up relevant cases that would help the judge. And both sides had reasons why each other's cases wouldn't matter here. So it's like, yeah, we don't really have a case like this. But again, that proves the point. Because the FTC has never tried to stop a deal like this in a vertical merger that doesn't really have a whole lot of problems to it. And I think that that's the biggest thing to me as I sat here and listened to the FTC attorneys get questioned by the judge today in closing arguments, Matt, the fact that they couldn't even explain basic data from their expert witness. Like that's something
they were so stumped.
Bro,
Man.
He's not there. You guys knew he wouldn't be there for closing arguments. This is a main basis of one of your big pillars of this case.
Yeah.
And you can't explain to the judge where his data came from.
Yeah.
sorry.
And she was like, well, you heard, was it Mrs. Bailey, right? That she said you heard her actually have real data that was, you're not denying, that shows that, you know, most players on PlayStation don't even play Call of Duty. Or that, you know, even the ones that do buy it may not play very much. You know, they're less than 5 or 20 hours a year or whatever it was, right? And they're like, you can't tell me that those people are going to go buy a PlayStation.
Right.
Go buy an Xbox. Yeah.
Right.
Which was like crazy. It was interesting hearing that. And it kind of tells you where her mind frame is about the PlayStation and the console side of this whole case. Right.
Yes.
And it'll be interesting to see what else happens with that. Now, the interesting thing is, too, Pong, that we have to keep remembering, right, is that to the FTC's point in this whole thing, they don't have to prove the case here.
Right.
They don't have to prove much. They just have to prove that there's a question, right?
They have to prove part of this, and Hogue has been doing a little bit of tweeting, thank God. And Florian Mueller also explained this as well. They have to prove to the judge enough that the judge believes that the FTC has a winnable case going forward.
Okay.
That's one of the main barriers that they have to break through. The judge has to believe that if this case goes forward, because again, this is just a preliminary injunction. Right. So assuming that Microsoft kept the deal going and we got to August, I believe it's August, right? August, when the FTC the case actually goes to trial, the judge has to believe that the FTC could walk into that court and win a case against Microsoft and deny this acquisition completely.
Right. Because so if she allows this, then it's essentially killing the deal.
If she gives them the PI, yes, according to Microsoft, that would kill the deal.
Which we can believe them or not. I don't know. Like I based on things, I would say probably will. I
would say no, but that's just me.
Right.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows at this point?
So it'll be interesting to see what happens if this preliminary injunction is granted. But I'm leaning right now to where that she won't allow it. And that the deal will be allowed to be closed, right? A lot of people made a big stink about Canada today. Not really understand, like they're thinking, well, Canada's blocking the deal now, and that's not what this is at all. All Canada did was try to make a correction in the fact that Microsoft said no other regulators made a big deal about the PlayStation stuff. Right.
Yes.
And Canada's like, well, we actually said but it's really irrelevant because there's no decision in Canada yet. You know what I mean? There was just questions.
Yeah, and their time passed. And their time expired.
They have no relevancy here whatsoever. Right. It's just they're just trying to back the FTC with this. Correct. And this wasn't really a big deal. So, you know, there's not another regulator that's all of a sudden blocked the deal. Everybody. That's not how that works.
There's a few waiting the outcome. New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand's waiting. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
So we'll see what happens with those. And I feel like right now, like I had to stop listening to the show, right? So it was getting really juicy. I don't know what's going to happen in the second half with the cloud stuff, right? I got a feeling and sense of where the judge is sitting right now. With regards to her thought process on where Sony lies. Also, the other interesting thing too, Pong, and I want to get your take on this.
Yeah.
Is she is saying basically that the deals on the table and that's signed by Microsoft with cloud providers,
yes,
to bring games to those services should be relevant. Whereas the FTC is saying that they don't have to account for those.
Correct. Because the FTC side of it says they aren't guaranteed. And so they're arguing that since they are very complex contracts, and the FTC is the one who used that word with lots and lots of different ins and outs, that there is no guarantee that those contracts are worth anything.
Says the same lawyers that ask every defendant or every witness to turn to PX 107.A1 to read this. You know what I mean? Okay, like they can't read through a contract and discern what's in it. Yeah, I find that BS. They've had plenty of time since those contracts were signed.
That's what I'm saying. Like, again, this is what boggles my mind. Like, you've got this high profile case. The entire world's watching it at this point because it's being covered in the mainstream, right? Business channels are covering this, economics. This is like the most high profile case the FTC has had. They've lost 7 other ones up to this point. I think it is now. Those cases were nowhere near covered as this. So this is your moment to start proving why you're on this crusade, this ideology led crusade to go against big tech. And this was your moment to get the public opinion on your side after, the past year and a half of being accused of abusing your power, especially Lina Khan as the head. And they show up in this state, like where they don't have the basic information, like they haven't put like everybody possible on this case and like know it frontwards and backwards. Again, for most of this trial, it has felt like you're watching public defenders. Yeah. Sappho made that comment, I think it was last week in Xbox Ultimate or whatever it was. But that's truly what it feels like. It feels like a public defender versus a high-profile defense attorney in Microsoft's attorney.
Yeah, especially with the attorney. There's one attorney from Microsoft's side. Yeah, that's directing the questioning to their witnesses and the executives from Microsoft, like Sarah Bond and and stuff. And he's been doing a fantastic job of just allowing that conversation to happen naturally, right?
Correct.
I'm pretty impressed by that. Yeah. And then the redirect from the FTC has been the worst thing to possibly listen to because it's like they haven't studied the industry whatsoever when they're asking questions, right?
That's spot on. They haven't. Like, they have no idea, and that's what's weird to me. Quick shout out to the judge too. Before we jumped on, they went to a quick break, and that's where Mav and I jumped on here. But right before, the FTC was again bringing up Sony, harm to Sony, and the judge finally did say, "But this case isn't about Sony. This should be about the consumer, right?"
Yeah.
And that was right before they cut the break there. So shout out to the judge.
Yeah, she didn't even allow a reply.
No.
She wasn't ready for them to say, but harming Sony harms the consumers, which is probably what they would say.
Of course. Right? Of course they would try that.
Because they would no longer get that Christmas skin.
Right. The Christmas skin.
the hypothetical Christmas character that Xbox gamers will get, but PlayStation.
And then she asked the FTC for other specific examples of where harm would occur, and he couldn't come up. He had to revert to something that I would do to a judge. I'm like, well, but there's unlimited possibilities here for that. This industry is so complex, and these deals, and you got marketing rights, and you've got co-marketing rights. There's just so many different ways. It's basically unlimited where that foreclosure could come from, Judge. So I can't really give you any more specific answers.
She asked about another example of another game like Call of Duty that has been an acquisition that has been pulled off of PlayStation, and they tried to say Elder Scrolls
16.
So Elder Scrolls Online, which the Microsoft lawyer later corrected. Elder Scrolls Online is on PlayStation, and they've actually released updates and add-ons and all that kind of stuff on PlayStation. Right. And then the lawyer proceeded to say Elder Scrolls 16. Well, she meant to say 6 is a single-player game, and it's slated
thinking of Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah,
she confused those two, obviously.
Yes, and then she also said Final Fantasy 6 later. Yeah, so she switched the two games. That Elder Scrolls 6 was slated for 2026 right now. So I don't know if, based on the fact that she said Elder Scrolls 16, I wouldn't put too much weight in the fact that she said 2026. She also had made a couple of other mistakes with talking about, but her basic point was very relevant. And immediately I thought of that. I was like, how are you going to compare a single player Elder Scrolls game that's not released yet to an annual release type Call of Duty multiplayer cross-platform game and there is no comparison. And
she couldn't. And the Microsoft attorney Beth, she brought up ESO and said that there's a difference here. ESO is the online multiplayer, which is still being supported on PlayStation 5 to this day. It's still getting expansions and updates. Elder Scrolls 16 is the single player game that is coming out in 2026.
Right.
You know, man, those economic experts that they brought in, Bailey and Lee for the FTC. Bailey was for MS, and then the Carlton guy who was he was questionable for Microsoft. To say the least, that was the worst.
Yeah, he was like
somebody didn't vet him. Somebody didn't vet him properly. When they brought up all the cases that his stuff has been disqualified from, I was like, who didn't check this? Like,
that being said, the judge actually acknowledged like some of his testimony.
Of his testimony, right? Other parts you could tell she was dismissing because it wasn't. But was it saying that those guys got paid like $2,000 an hour? They needed us in their Mav to be standing next to the MS attorneys and correcting like the titles of the games and giving them release schedule dates. Like we should have been there, like passing them notes. Like no. Elder Scrolls 6, Beth. Elder Scrolls 6. Yeah. And it's 2028, Beth. 2028.
Yeah.
I would have done that for like $100.
And it'll be 30 frames.
Yeah, it'll be 30 frames.
Say that when you talk about it.
Oh, good God. Oh, man. This is crazy, man. Like I said, I have no idea where we're going to go here because we got so much that we could dive into, especially on this case.
I mean, I would think of one place we could definitely dive into.
What, Speculation Town?
You know where I was going. Yeah,
of course, because we were laughing about it in the DMs. Let's see here, Mav. Give some people a shout out in the chat. I'm going to be right back.
Yeah, no problem. Sup, everybody, and thank you for watching this episode of PM in the PM. We are on episode number 77. While Pong is taking a break to probably clean out his bowels. I'm just kidding, Pong. You're probably gonna hear me. We will say hi to the chat. Shout out also to Booty Hunting Click, member for 13 months. Says FTC, I need my tax money back. You're a waste. Shout out to Vic, and love the name change, my friend. But also, hey, what's up to M Gene? What's up, OCD Gamer, Ray Oy, Talos Ray, Nix, 3-Bit, OCD Gamer, Milky Sweater, Blackcarde. Let's see, we got It's Tim A is here as well. Xboxer Mike, Joe Dunmore, Cyber, what's up? Niturnal here is hanging out. What's up, Niturnal? Sirve, what's up? How you doing? Let's see, we got Jasper here, part of the families here hanging out. We got Whoop Whoop Kid. Shout out to Whoop Whoop Kid. Let's see who else we got here hanging out. Spider-Man is here. Sith Lord, what's up, Sith? That was my beautiful wife Caitlin hanging out in the chat. Hey, baby. Ardhi M, what's up? How's it going? Tony Grasso, the Godfather, here is hanging out. I know you're excited for this week, my friend. Goat Reviews, what is going on, Goat? How's it going? Let's see who else we got here. Boss Mod, Lethal Papa, here hanging out in the chat. What's up? What's up, Boss Mod, the #1 mod out there in the Xbox gaming streets as well. Mitchie Dies a Lot, what's up? How's it going with you? See, we got Sin here hanging out. Let's see here. Remake Station 5. What's up, Remake Station 5? Nice. The Void Rat, how are you? Why So Serious is here as well. Boba Fett Gaming, what's up, Boba? Man, I got lots of people here, dude. HitnFGsBluntd. What's up? How's it going with you? Let's see here. Kevin Baldwin, how are you doing? Jason Max, Polly Baba here in the chat. Let's see. Man, there's a lot of people here. Steelers fan, 1972. Nice. Yeah, that's a throwback. 1972 Steelers fan. 4 in a row back in those days.
Let's go. Franco, baby.
Bradshaw. Yeah.
Bradshaw. Come on.
Lynn Swan.
Lynn Swan, man.
Let's see. Was it the Immaculate Reception?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we know our football here, man. Let's go.
Correct, sir. Yep.
Let's see. Lady Foxfire, how's it going? Calorie, how are you doing?
Calorie.
Jago 6, Gogol Poe is here as well. I feel like you do a better job at reading through these. RSJ fan, how's it going, RSJ fan, as well. And Cyber Gunter here's hanging out. Damn, dude, lots of names. Hey, if I missed you, there's Scott Free as well. Ken Hall, how's it going?
Black Krillin.
Black Krillin
is here.
Wolf of
Gerald
Darkness.
Mack. What's going on? Stupid
Rellskee.
Jackson's in the house. Ardhi M. What's going on, Oscar? Emilio. Hey, Gonzalez.
Paying 911.
Go Poe's in the house. Oh, man, we got everybody.
Cupid's Victim.
Boba Fett Gaming. What's going on?
Yeah.
We got everybody.
I think I got to try to get to you. I'm sorry if I missed you, but hi, everybody. What's up?
Mav did an admirable job.
I tried. Punk's better.
You just did a nice job, Mav. Quick shout out to Caitlin. Extra special shout out to Caitlin because she wasn't getting what our thumbnail was going to be today, like normal, because Mav was being so busy. So I hit her up in the DMs because she asked what our thumbnail was going to be on Twitter. So I hit her up in the DMs with the Konami, the final round graphic, and told her just Microsoft versus FTC. And she did the rest. She even put little tattoos on their arms. Phil's got the Microsoft symbol. And shout out to Jim with the PlayStation, of course, triangle, square, 0, O, and X. So that was awesome. A way to go, Caitlin. Appreciate that for sure. Got the symbols. So yeah, Mav, you said you wanted to jump into speculation town because this is one of the things that happened this week that was absolutely crazy. And this was a court mistake.
Yeah.
That we found out later on was a big, gigantic boo-boo. This is the risk that these companies do take. This is why Mav and I, when we were talking about this, if it ever got to the courts, something might slip out, right? Something might that we're not supposed to see. We've seen this before. Epic versus Apple. We got a full contract that showed how Sony was, kind of constructing their contracts around Game Pass, right? That's where we got our first glimpse at that for real. So these things happen when they go to courts. But this week, there's been a lot of boo-boos, man. A lot. In fact, it got so bad that, as Tom Warren reported last night, they were going in and correcting and redacting the information that nobody was supposed to see. And eventually they just gave up and pulled the whole thing down. So the publicly available files through the court system that were a part of this process, no longer there because they just said, screw it. We made so many mistakes and so much information is out there now. We're just going to take the whole thing down. But one of those things, Mav, is the acquisition season wish list from Microsoft. And this is our bread and butter, Mav. Now, kind of my soapbox, how I was going to start this show was to point out yet again, and this is vital to this community. When I first came into this community, forgive me, give me a few minutes of your time here, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes here real quick. When I first came into the community, I used to go all over the place, right? I didn't know who was who, what was what. I used to listen to a ton of people, tons of different podcasts, and started figuring out, kind of the lines and where they were drawn. And then I hopped into podcasting, and I used to speak out frequently when I first hopped into podcasting. I used to go on some pretty good rants on a regular basis about console warring and the stupidity of the clown show, the circus. And I was told at that time, or I was told as I kept podcasting, I started getting told, don't tell people that they can't console war. If you don't like it, just don't listen, don't watch, mute, block, whatever. It's not, don't gatekeep that. People are out here having fun. It's not that serious, bro, even though we've seen it get real serious. All that kind of stuff. So I eventually took a step back and I said, you know what? That's fine. That's fine. If people want a console war, if they want to treat this, because again, the thing that's always brought up is, well, it happens in sport fan bases. Why can't it happen here? I will say it's as cringe in sports as it is here. For me personally, I don't think people fighting and throwing beers in the stands is any cooler than people slinging personal insults over PlayStation, Xbox are on Twitter. But that's not for me. That's not my energy. It's not my place. So be it. I stepped out of that. I don't talk about it. You'll hear me bring up the actors. You'll hear me bring up the snakes, the clowns every once in a while, but I don't go after them for console warring. I said, fine. I started muting everybody. But it's not just with the negativity that we see this as well. Mav, I didn't know Mav when he named this channel Fun Speculation. I met him after that fact. But let me tell you, the spirit of that name is truly a part of our channel and most of our family. Whether you're watching me and Steel and Living Split Screen, you're watching us here, any of Mav's shows, that spirit is a lot of what we do here. And there was a time during acquisition 2021 season before the ABK deal when there was tons of rumors going around. There was people actually coming out, some people that Mav and I actually respect, and they didn't necessarily direct it at us, but we were some of the loudest. We were doing regular shows. Mav had an entire solo show in which he named off potentials and all that kind of stuff, along with all the studios they already owned. So we were doing it frequently. We were told we shouldn't do that by a lot of people, by chats, by other content creators.
Well,
and
also,
we shouldn't do
Pong,
that.
the precursor to PM and the PM was actually that show.
That show.
We had a whole acquisition talk, and it went so good. We're like, man, we got to do this.
We should do this.
So that's what formed PM and the PM, actually.
Yeah. So, but we were told we shouldn't talk about it anymore. You were raising expectations too high. You were getting the community fired up over nothing. You don't know anything. You're not a part of these companies. Just wait until it happens and then talk about it. Why are you guys talking about all these what ifs? And we were going big, Mav. At least what we thought was big at the time. We were talking WB, right? We were talking WB Discovery a lot. Yeah. We were talking hypothetically EA's, Ubisoft's, Square Enix. We were talking about these things. Sega. And we were talking about Sega, obviously, was one of the main ones. And we were talking about some of the smaller studios, IO Interactive, right? Asobo, right? And we started getting flack for it, that we shouldn't be doing that. And then lo and behold, the ABK deal happens, which 99% of the people out here, shout out to Fuzzy, who did mention it once or twice, that he thought it was a potential. But 99% of the people probably never saw it coming. ABK comes out of the woodwork. Well, now, Mav, funny enough, through this court case, we get word and actual evidence of what internal wish lists look like at Microsoft, of the amount of different developers they were keeping their eye on and who they were actually targeting. And in fact, potentially had some talks with early on. And these lists, Mav, are beyond anything we ever discussed, brother. So as I put on my tweet this week, lesson learned, folks. When this ABK deal's through and the rumor mill starts churning again about the next acquisition, because there is going to be another one. Don't let anybody tell you they're done after this or not. We're going to go bigger, Mav. We're going to go bigger next time, Mav. We're going to go all out.
We didn't go big enough.
We didn't go big enough. Phil's Christmas list is ridiculous. Okay. And we're going to get into this right here because Mav wants to talk about this first. So let's do this, Mav. So I don't know how you want to do this because there's different sets out there of all the documents that Microsoft has. I happen to have 4 of them.
There's like the big list and there's like funneled down list and like different ones on the different lists. Like
correct. Crazy. And we know for a fact, let's start here, Mav. Let's start here. So let's start with some of the big ones, the publishers, okay, that we know for a fact now they had conversations or were extremely interested in buying. And there's 3. Now, correct me if I'm forgetting one, Mav, but there's 3 up front that I know of through these lists that they were either engaged in or had real considerations for. So that is Sega, Square Enix, and Paradox. Those 3 publishers. Now, I've seen Focus floated, Focus Entertainment. I don't know if that was on the serious list or if that was on one of their watch lists, but I've seen that one floated as well. But the 3 that I know of, and Mav, are those the ones that you know about too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Those 3 right there were all ones that we had talked about in varying degrees, right? In varying degrees. Obviously, number 1, Sega. Let's do this, Mav. Sega. The word is,
yeah, and they've actually come out and made a statement now as well.
I was going to bring that up as well because today, because they are a publicly traded company, right? Their stocks can be affected by this stuff. They had to come out and respond today to this news coming out. And the COO, did I post? Yeah, I did. Where is it? Where is it? I just saw it. I thought I saw it.
Yeah,
Hold
there's so
on.
much stuff in our DMs, man.
Dude, bro, there's so much stuff. I thought I had it up. Where is that? Oh, here it is. I got it. All right. So from Bloomberg exclusive, Sega's COO, Utsumi appreciated Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond of Xbox as Sega feels Microsoft values Sega more than any other platform owners, yet Sega has no intention to be acquired for now.
For now.
For now. I can't. Yeah, of course it's behind a paywall. Of course it is. Why would you not be behind a paywall? Of course it is. But I saw the summaries of this article, and basically all he was doing what they need to do as a publicly traded company. Right. They came out and said, we have a great relationship with Microsoft. It's really great. Everything's cool. We're working together on this Super Games program. You guys know about that. That's a public deal that we announced earlier, but we are happy to be independent, and we have no intentions of selling for now. Right. So he did his job and put that out there. But we know there was talks already. We know that they had talks with Sega. So we're not, I don't think I can safely say, Mav, that you're not surprised necessarily by this news. Like, no, this is I one will that say
on multiple times when we talked about their deal with the cloud.
Yes.
We were also told it was only about the cloud.
Correct.
And we even come out now, even with these statements today, I think justifies our thoughts back then that announced partnership signified much of a stronger unification of the two ideas behind Sega and Microsoft with the philosophy and what they want to do and work together and all these things than just building the super game thing, right, that they're talking about.
Correct,
right?
Correct.
And we've seen evidence of that since. Obviously, all these Persona games coming to Xbox via Atlas. We've seen multiple games come to Game Pass either day one or get put in there later as well. Even day one PC games as well, like Total War. New game had launched on PC Game Pass, and I think one of the Persona games that was announced at the Xbox show, Persona 5 or Persona 3 Reload and Persona 5 Tactica, I believe are coming to Game Pass day one as well, right? We've seen multiple benefits of that partnership, and maybe they couldn't go beyond the partnership at the time because of ABK. Right? It's a possibility. Who knows? And for now is a very interesting statement for me. Like I think there's a possibility of things strengthening even more in the future. We've talked about ones that would make sense, and for Japan and in the eastern side, but also for PC as well. I think that Sega makes a lot of sense there, and obviously they were a target.
Yeah.
So who knows how, if they were approached or what, but obviously evidence now shows that we weren't crazy for thinking that, as well as others in the community that have been suggesting Sega for a long time.
Shout out to Everborn, who was really pissed that it didn't go through.
Yeah. I mean, I made a joke post today, some people thought I was serious. Like, I want ABK to fail now just so they can go and get Sega, Square Enix, and the other 100 companies that were mentioned on the list. I mean, Sega would be for personal, like, gaming taste for me, would be more something that I would have liked to see. You would get to see Obsidian get the Alpha Protocol IP rights back. You would get to see Creative Assembly and Relic be owned by Microsoft, which creates awesome possibilities for RTSs in the future as well. So it's more than just Sonic. I think a lot of people just think of Sega and just think Sonic, right?
Yeah. Yes,
but there's RPGs, JRPGs. You got potential for more fighting game franchise. You got all these different things. They have licensed IP with anime and stuff. They had that Demon Slayer game last year. Lots of different things that Sega does as well, like that would be beneficial. So I think Sega would make a lot of sense. And regardless, though, I think we're seeing some benefits with that strengthened relationship. And it was interesting that that Sega, the CEO, said that Microsoft and Xbox values them more than the other platform holders. That's a strong statement to make as a publisher. To come out and say that Microsoft and Xbox values you more than PlayStation and Nintendo does. Right? I haven't seen other publishers like 2K or another major publisher come out and say, you know, PlayStation values us more than Xbox. You know what I mean? We've seen some say that they value PlayStation more than Xbox by their actions, right? But for them to feel that appreciated and stuff, I think is important for our benefits in the future for Xbox, right?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, you know, it makes it a lot easier to value a company if you're thinking long term that eventually you could own them, right? And this has been a strong partnership for a long time, ever since, you know, the Dreamcast and then Xbox, the OG Xbox. Obviously, those partnerships remain strong. But if you do see yourself someday potentially putting a ring on it, obviously you're going to pay a little bit more attention to that company, right? Obviously, it's going to be a little bit easier to spread the money around with somebody that you really like, right? It's going to be a lot easier to cut deals like they did to help them with their super game initiative. And then on top of that, probably work in that deal, extra money for the Atlas catalog, for all that kind of stuff that we are now seeing the benefits from. It's a lot easier to spend money on somebody that you like. You don't spend money on people that you don't like necessarily, unless you're trying to buy them, you know, win them over with cash. But we've seen with like Square Enix, that just doesn't work. So with Sega, this is a natural partnership. That's why we always had it in discussions. That's why a lot of people have always said that Sega kind of should be underneath Xbox at this point. A lot of people who did invest in the original OG Xbox came off a Dreamcast, and they felt like the OG Xbox was an extension of the Dreamcast, or Dreamcast Part 2, right? For a lot of people, that was the case as well. There was a lot of Sega fans who moved to the Xbox. So that sentiment has been there for a long time. So this wasn't shocking at all. You remember, Mav, I got to take us back a little bit during acquisition season. Remember when, wasn't it Sega's Instagram started posting weird things that were like Xbox? They were posting like green things, remember? And they had some of their people doing the X symbol. And everybody was running with it, remember? And everybody's like, oh, doesn't mean a damn thing. Doesn't mean anything. Excuse me. Not everything is a conspiracy theory, folks. In fact, a lot of conspiracies turn out to be true if you go throughout history. So it wouldn't shock me in the world is that that's when the talks were happening, not only for this partnership with the Super Game Initiative, but potentially an acquisition talk as well. And so the Sega social media team was hinting that things were kind of moving and shaking behind the scenes a little bit, right? You always think that these companies, oh, they're never going to do anything like that. Yeah, but when they get creative with their social media teams, they're not really saying anything because everybody goes, nah, it's just conspiracy theory. Stop doing this. It's nonsense. They don't mean anything by it. It's just coincidence. They know that. So they can play around a little bit. That's what social media teams do to get that interaction going. So I just got to bring us back to that point because I remember us going, And I think Greenberg retweeted one of them as well. It was like, why is Greenberg retweeting this account? So yeah, just interesting times that we now found out that Sega was close. We don't have to deep dive Paradox. Everybody who's listened to me for any amount of time knows that I love Paradox as a publisher, right? That they make, they're the publisher, especially on the PC side of things, but now have been really supporting Xbox and bringing 4X strategy games to consoles, not just Xbox. Obviously, they brought Stellaris and other games to PlayStation, as Crusader Kings 3 as well to PlayStation, but they've been supporting Xbox with marketing deals, or I should say Xbox has been supporting them with marketing deals. We've seen some of their stuff show up on Game Pass. Paradox has Harebrained Scheme games, right? Which is has, I forget the gentleman's name now. Why do I always forget his name? I remember the studio, but I can never remember his name. The original creator of Shadowrun. When he left Xbox, he eventually wound up with a second new studio and fell underneath Paradox. And they actually made the Shadowrun games for PC, which we also saw finally transferred over to Xbox and come to Game Pass as well. So there's a lot of love with Paradox. Paradox makes a lot of sense from the PC side of things.
Jordan Wiseman, right?
Jordan Wiseman. Thank you so much. Yeah, Jordan Wiseman. So that makes a lot of sense. And Phil's said in the past that one of his biggest mistakes was letting Weisman go. That he wishes he could have that one back. Again, Weisman, one of the original creators of Shadowrun, like the dude is ultra talented. And Paradox just in general aligns with at least one portion, two, I would say, of what Microsoft is trying to do. The PC side of things, 100%. They have a huge PC presence, right? City Skylines 2 coming out soon. Going to be gigantic. That's coming in Game Pass as well. They have this huge PC presence, but they also have created diversity within the console space by bringing grand strategy games that a lot of companies refuse to bring over to console just because there's no market. That's a niche title. It's niche titles, but they brought them over. And so I think that kind of aligns here, Matt. You got any thoughts on Paradox at all?
I mean, it adds also to the PC side as well. Microsoft's really focusing a lot on PC stuff as well. But the cool thing about Paradox is they're one that is putting more and more of those strategy games on console. Yes. Right. Yes. And I think it's a great partnership for that side because they're doing cross-platform, cross-progression type stuff with those games. Would be a big deal. Putting all of them in Game Pass, I think, would grow the audience for Paradox's games as well. So I would see incentive for Paradox's side to be more involved with Xbox and have that exposure, right? So it makes a lot of sense. And, you know, Microsoft already has some big IP that, and you know, getting another RTS or strategy type game developer that could make some of those games, I think would be a boon for them as well, instead of just the Paradox owned games. I would think Paradox could be chomping at the bit potentially to work on big IP as well, that because a lot of their games are like, you know, their original games that they made, like, you know, I think like Stellaris or you know, some of these. Can't remember some of the names of some of the other ones. You know,
Age of Wonders. Age of
Wonders is a big one. Yep. But you know, if they had some of these like IP that are more household names as well, and doing a strategy game based on that would be pretty cool. I'm just looking at an incentive from Paradox's side as well. You know,
the risk factors, right? Too, Matt, with strategy games, right? It is a niche genre. It does have a bigger presence on PC.
Yeah, but console. For Paradox, you're not paying as big of a premium from Microsoft side either, right?
Correct. Yes, absolutely, 100%. But to be underneath the umbrella, again, takes away all that level of risk, right, Mav? It takes away that stress of, oh my God, what happens if City Skylines 2, which I believe is their most expensive game that they've ever published, right? City Skylines 2 is going to be big for them. If there is a AAA strategy game, a city builder game, City Skylines is it. So they're pumping more money into this. You can see it through the marketing. It's probably why they took some of the money up front from Game Pass to be on there, because that mitigates that risk. But they don't have to worry about that underneath Xbox. Like, oh my God, when City Skylines 2 doesn't do what we need it to do, then what are we going to, you know, that's a big chunk of money that we just put into this game. It's a big portion of all of our profits, our revenue. Now what happens? That's what the little developers are always worried about, right? And so I think that would be a huge benefit for Paradox. They could expand out, like you said, Mav. They could try new things as well. They would be very good at hiring new talent specifically for those types of games and feeding that pipeline. Again, it's all about diversity on Microsoft's side. They want to cover all these types of genres. Well, here you got one of the best publishers in the world for the strategy games coming over underneath your umbrella. Now that talent instantly follows them as well. Well, that's unique talent. Not everybody goes into dev work to become a strategy game maker, right? It's a niche as it is. So it takes special people who want to do those types of games. And then again, to have Jordan Weisman back underneath the tent, back in, and, you know, be able to work on Shadowrun as he wanted to, because Microsoft still owns the Shadowrun IP. They just licensed it out to his studio, out to Paradox, for him to make those games. But now you could have a bigger budget. Maybe Phil gives him a bigger budget to go redo a full Shadowrun game. Again, could be very exciting for Paradox. And it made a lot of sense when you look at it. Then let's get to the final one. Square Enix, Mav. The internal documents came out that November 1st, 2019, they had a full outlined plan to acquire Square Enix, and we're presenting it to Satya.
Right.
So this was serious. This wasn't a, hey, should we just go get Square? No. They were ready to go and gobble up Square. And 2019, they still owned Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, which obviously was probably part of the puzzle there too as well.
Yep.
This one I have argued for and against. I've argued for because I would actually want to see the absolute scorched earth that happens on Twitter if Microsoft were to ever acquire Square Enix. The absolute scorched earth. I want to see the clowns burn themselves down as they try to wrap their heads around the fact that Square Enix is now owned by Microsoft, right? That's my own little personal thing, right? Again, I hate the console war stuff. So for me, that would be my little revenge where I just got to sit back and just laugh at the meltdowns. But I've also argued against it because philosophy-wise, from a manager side of things, a managerial side of things, from a higher up level, their philosophies don't seem to match at all about what they're trying to do in this industry. And I've talked about how Square Enix, from my own opinion, is behind from that standpoint, thinking wise. They still act like this is the early 2000s.
Well, last we know is that they're starting to experiment with NFTs.
Correct.
Still,
that too,
right?
Yeah. So,
you know,
that's why I argued against Square Enix, because Microsoft tends to want to acquire people that they can leave alone. They've already confirmed that the ABK deal goes through because the FTC is arguing, well, if they close over the top of us, it's going to be a nightmare to undo this deal, even if we win in court down the road. And Microsoft's like, no. They're going to be a separate entity. They're going to be a subsidiary of Xbox, right? Of Microsoft Gaming. They're going to be a subsidiary. So they're going to continue to run that the way that they want to, as we've seen pretty much happen with ZeniMax as well. Microsoft likes to acquire things that they don't have to touch when it comes to a publisher. Square Enix does give them the biggest mobile publisher in the East. They are the biggest mobile publisher. A lot of people don't know that, but it is true. Shout out to Hargate Chinese, who was the first to mention that I was aware of. And he did that on Xbox Ultimate, I think, with us. So Square does make a lot of sense from a business side. Just philosophy side, I don't think so. But Matt, what's your thoughts that they were this close to making sure that we got Final Fantasy Tactics on Xbox, that we got all the new,
my heart.
I know, right, bro? All the new Final Fantasies. We're never going to skip Xbox again. And we might even finally get Final Fantasy 14 over here. For God's sakes, man. What do you think? What do you think, bro?
I think that out of a lot of the potential acquisitions, that one would have had the most sway with consumers as far as what games are on Xbox now versus what weren't previously, right? Because Square keeps skipping, right? So out of all of them, that would have made the biggest impact as far as bringing games that weren't there before to Xbox now, right? Because the Xbox has already handled that side with Sega with their partnership. And Square still, it makes the decisions of excluding platforms based on upfront marketing deals, right? And we've heard in this trial now also that it costs Sony way less for those deals than it would Microsoft because of the sales numbers, obviously, that are on PlayStation compared to Xbox. So it's like try and keep Xbox small, which is what Phil Spencer's talked about, which is what Satya said. That's kind of like Sony's model and what they try and do, right? So Square would have had a big impact as far as that goes. Now, that being said, would Sony at that point just put their money in a different place and have the same effect, right? It depends on if another publisher is willing to take that deal, like Square. Because Square keeps making those deals and they keep complaining about them, right? So it's obviously not a great business decision. Otherwise, Square would constantly be celebrating their games, but instead, Square, time and time again, is talking about the lack of sales of their games, right? Hence, one reason why they moved on from Crystal Dynamics. Almost did it again. Damn it, Pong. Crystal
No.
Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, right? So,
Yes.
bringing them on, though, you would get, Dragon Quest games would be there day one for sure. You would get Final
Game
Fantasy
Pass.
games there day
Game
one in
Pass.
Game Pass, right? Which would have a big impact in Japan, I think, but
Yes.
so would Sega,
Yes.
Um,
Can you imagine had they gotten both, Matt? Had they just locked down the East, right? They get Atlas and they get Square Enix.
Yeah.
They would go from JRPGs being a weakness to an absolute strength on this side.
Like, we had Hargeet on an episode of Xbox Ultimate one week, and he made some really good a really good case for Square, in my opinion, because of the mobile side in Japan. Because they have a lot of apps and stuff there, like mobile games that they don't release in the States, or maybe they do. Just nobody cares about them in the States. I don't know, but they do have like a large mobile branch as well. That would be a big impact. So Square would make a lot of sense business wise. For me, the biggest benefit of that would be like, okay, now you get to make sure that those Final Fantasy games and stuff like that are on Xbox. But besides that, Square Enix doesn't have as many games that I care as much about. Like I don't know. I'm trying to think in my head. Guardians of the Galaxy was big, but are they going to keep doing games like that now? You know what I mean? They seem to be focusing more.
Oh, no, they're going to go east. They're going to lean into the east, right? Yeah.
And Final Fantasy is the big JRPGs that they do, and I don't know of a lot of other big ones that they've announced right now. I'm not a big Kingdom Hearts guy. Dragon Quest I think is cool, but I don't really play a lot of it or anything. So Final Fantasy would be the big one for me. Yeah. And it's for me to say, oh, they need to buy it just to make sure that one game is on Xbox. That would be a big reach, for me as far as just my personal preference. But I understand why it would make a lot of business sense for Microsoft.
Yeah, no, it absolutely would. I mean, again, if I had my choice, I'd much rather have Bandai Namco. Personally, that's just me. Over Square. But at the same time, again, for me, I'm not like I've played lots of Final Fantasies, but they're not at the top of my list. Usually when it comes to JRPGs, outside of Final Fantasy X is my favorite Final Fantasy ever. But that power that comes with that, Mav, is undeniable when you're talking about influence on the East, especially, and parts of the rest of the world. Final Fantasy is such a huge. For me, Dragon Quest coming and getting think about Square Enix with Xbox money, because a lot of Square Enix's problems has been they've been having to do deals because their financial situation is so shitty because of decision
it would probably benefit Square more than the other publishers as far as the position that they're in.
Yes, right. 100%. I believe that, Matt. Like they could again start putting money in all the places that they've kind of sacrificed over the years. They've pushed Dragon Quest off to the side. Dragon Quest is still huge in the East. Don't get me wrong. And I think that, again, there was one point when Dragon Quest was almost side by side with Final Fantasy in some instances. And I think you would bring that back to prominence again across the world, and really do some crazy things with it. And then, like I said, Final Fantasy 14 being able to expand to Xbox finally, getting the server relief that game needs, giving that team more, because that team, without Final Fantasy 14, Square Enix already would have been bought or they would have been bankrupt. Okay. If you go look at the financials, Final Fantasy 14 is carrying Square Enix and has been for years now. If they never brought that game back from the dead, if they had never found the success they did with Final Fantasy 14, Square might not be here today as we know them. Final Fantasy 14 expanding over to Xbox and also getting the server relief that they need from Xbox themselves would be a huge boon. Then on top of it, that team being able to go in without any consideration, or again, I know there's always going to be budgets, but compared to what they're working with now, being able to think big and expand, or think about the next iteration of Final Fantasy 14, what that's going to start looking like, much like we talked about with Blizzard and World of Warcraft 2, which we know internally they've done work on World of Warcraft 2, but Bobby says no. just stay with the original, keep making money. Can't go to World of Warcraft 2, might screw up our whole system. Underneath Xbox, I think that would happen, and Final Fantasy 14 be another one where they could think about the next iteration. So I think it would be a huge boon to Square Enix, and I could see why it would be such a big buy for Microsoft. Instantaneous power, and again, if you combine that with a Sega deal on top of it, man, they go again from a spot. I'm not saying like they all of a sudden become the number one, selling console over in Japan. I'm not saying that. I'm not stupid. Okay. But you have instant credibility. You've bought yourself credibility and respect from a very tough place to establish those things. And you would be seen as better because of those two companies being underneath your umbrella. You would be in a better light over there for sure. And I think it would be gigantic. And again, the mobile publishing side of Square and now even Sega, as they just picked up Rovio, right? Angry Birds maker, would be huge. Like, if that's really where they're going and mobile's the next big war, that would be gigantic, right? So Square does make a lot of sense. It does.
Yeah.
Funny story I didn't bring up today about Sega too, Mav. I don't know if you saw this. I did post it in the DMs though. Sarah Bond was over in London with her family taking a vacation. Do you see that?
Yeah. Listen, passing the Sega headquarters there on the highway.
I've already said how much I like Sarah Bond,
right,
and that I could see her as the eventual replacement for Phil. I'm on board with that train. I've said I do think that they might need somebody else up beside her as an equalizer in some areas. But the more that she does, the more I'm okay with just even thinking about her taking over. Because I think Phil wears a lot of shoes because he's come up in Microsoft from the beginning, and this has been his whole career. So he understands a bigger base. He has a bigger base of knowledge about Microsoft in general and about all the working pieces and different departments than most people ever will. That's the only reason why Sarah might need somebody else to equalize or to help balance that out, because I think Phil right now, there's not too many people that could handle what he does as Microsoft gaming CEO all by themselves. I think Phil is extra special when it comes to that. But the more I see of Sarah, the more obviously she's pushed forward, the more she's been doing, and a lot of her work in the East is why we have a lot of these deals. But she was on vacation with her family in London, a much deserved vacation after her testimony last week. And she took a picture saying, had a great trip, whatever, love London, UK. And she took a trip, and I think they were riding a train probably to the airport or whatever else, man. But she took a picture out the window, and it looked like pretty much a window overlooking kind of part of a city. And you got, some apartment buildings or whatever in the foreground, and then in the background there's a office building, and it wasn't obvious, Mav, unless you zoomed in on that office building.
Yeah,
it was Sega headquarters in London. She gets it, Mav. She gets it. She knew what she was doing. Like, it's amazing. What did you think about that, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's just awesome. She's poking at the current situations going on right now, and like, I gotta say, she did a great job with her when her time was on the stand as well, right? So, and I think part of it is like she's a big reason why the Sega partnership happened and is what it is, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So there's those out there that are try and like diminish or belittle like her value to Xbox as far as like with the executives and stuff, and she's she made some moves that we as consumers on Xbox have benefited from, right? All these Atlas games we're getting that have been announced, and it's come out in like with the FTC case against Microsoft about like more about what her role's been and getting some of these other deals done and stuff like that. So a pretty big damn player there making stuff happen with Xbox. So that's been awesome. But yeah, that picture is hilarious, man. And at first great. I was just like, oh, why is everybody talking about this? So I had to click on the picture and I saw it, and I saw Sega on the building. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. On the same day that the COO of Sega comes out and talks about their value, how they like to be valued by Microsoft and stuff like that. And about the day after talks about the Microsoft was thinking about acquiring Sega and all this kind of stuff. Maybe it's in the cards in the future. Maybe it is. I wouldn't say no. That's for sure.
Correct. Another moment for Sarabon today, which she wasn't a part of, actually, was there was a hot mic moment in court today, Mav. I don't know if you saw this.
No, I did not.
They went to one of their, I think it was their lunch break or was one of their afternoon breaks, right? And the mic was left on. And you can hear somebody in the background, and some people I listened to it very briefly, rightfully assumed it's probably the judge talking. And she was talking with somebody, and she said she was mesmerized by Sarabon in her testimony.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes. She was mesmerized by Sarabon on the stand.
Wow.
Right. So pretty crazy little moment there. A bunch of people caught up on it, caught it for the people that were listening to the streams, which weren't supposed to be streamed. But anyways, we know that's not been the case. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. Let's see here. Continuing down speculation. Yeah, did you have something, Matt?
No. I was just gonna say, like I said, that she's been impressive, Sarabon, throughout the whole thing. And like even just when they talked about her credentials, it's like Harvard and Yale.
Yes, right.
Not just one, but both. Right. And they go into that, and then like the attempted gotcha moments and stuff like that. It's like not just her, but like all of the executives have been doing a great job not to be fooled by the FTC lawyers and into these gotcha moments, right?
Right. So. Exactly.
We do have a super chat real quick.
Go ahead. Grab it.
And I'll let you answer this, Pong.
Okay.
Stay High FFF with a $2 super chat.
What's up, Stay High? Thank you.
Asked, what happened to Warhammer 40K on Xbox?
They had so many issues with the PC version that they have indefinitely delayed the console version for Xbox. There is no word where they're at. They are still patching the PC version to this day. I tried to play the PC version now, and I couldn't get into it. Servers wouldn't let me in. Some people are saying it's much better than it was at launch. Some people are still saying it's got massive problems, that this game was probably 2 years away from being acceptable. So right now the Xbox version is on indefinite hold, and there's no word whether or not they will ever get around to it right now, because it may not be worth it to them at this point. Of once very promising game that was high on my list. I think, Mav, you were pretty excited about it too. Every time we saw it, it looked great. Another one of those games that just came out broken. Big promises under delivered, right? Is basically what it came down to. So that's where it stands right now. Too bad too. Sucks.
Yep.
Another deal that Microsoft made. Like I said, Microsoft is cursed in a lot of ways with their third-party deals.
Yeah, Stalker. The whole war broke out. You know what I mean? Yeah, Stalker. Like you have Warhammer 40K. Yep. You had I mean, you can even like point to like High on Life. Like shortly after that, the whole court case that involved the creator of that game. And stuff, and it's like, man, it's like a game after game after game with a lot of these third-party deals with these I'm gonna say like smaller developers, right? It's they're kind of cursed with some of those.
They've had some good ones, but they've had more than their fair share of bad luck with a lot of these. Again, it's just kind of seeing.
You can point at like even to like a bigger like Outriders of Square, like
yes,
that was a successful game with getting people excited and getting people to play it, but Square and not Square people can it was more on Square, I think.
But it was more on Square.
People can fly and Square, drop the ball on the servers, and you had bugs and all these things happening within that. That's not Microsoft's fault, right?
And Square screwed People Can Fly out of their bonus money because they supposedly didn't count the Game Pass money they got up front from Microsoft as part of the profits.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
So yeah. And
even
to this day, People Can Fly say they haven't been paid a dime.
And People Can Fly is ones that just made a deal recently with Xbox for a new game, right?
For a new game, up to a $50 million budget.
Yeah. That's look for it. Like, don't underestimate that studio.
No.
That's a very talented team, and if they have the right backing and the right budget and the right expectations and all these kind of things, I would think this could be probably their best game that could come out, whatever this is from Microsoft, like just because of the budget and everything that's going to be involved with it. They made what was the game that they made with under Epic?
You're thinking about
Bulletstorm.
Thank you. Yes, I got it right here. Bulletstorm. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun game, right? It was a new IP and like
critically
original.
Praised.
Yeah, it was a really fun game. They also worked on Gears of War before. They did Gears of War Judgment. Much maligned from the Gears community. I actually appreciated that game. I thought it was fun. Good. It wasn't good. As you got to understand probably the time and budget they had compared to a traditional Gears release, right? As well, But I actually had a lot of fun with that game.
And Outriders was on the brink of greatness, man. Yeah. Outriders and Anthem are two games that were on the brink of greatness. Now, there's different factors for both as to why they didn't hit, but both of those games, the base game itself, the underlying mechanics and what they had there was potentially a great game. Outriders, had an extra year to polish that game and make sure that the servers were going to be good when it launched and they weren't going to have people losing all their gear. Shout out to Cog, who was naked forever in that game and couldn't get his gear back. Listen, that game still to this day, me and Steele have gone back, reran it. It is a good game. It is a good game as it stands today. It had the chance to be great had they had more time and budget. And I think that that's what Mav's alluding to here. This is a team that's always been on the cusp. They've always made these games. Again, Bulletstorm is probably the most well-rounded game they made overall and still holds up to this day. You can go play it in backwards compatibility, or they've got the remaster version too, I believe, right? So go play that game. It still holds up. The mechanics still hold up. The graphics still hold up. Everything about the gunplay, it's fantastic. So they've always been on that cusp. And I think that if they are fully in control of this game and Microsoft is backing them completely, obviously they've said it's a brand new IP. Microsoft is paying for this, so they will own that IP. People can fly. This could be the one, Mav. You are absolutely spot on with that. This could be the one that finally people can fly can say, there you go. This is what we can do. We arrived, right? We're here now, right? And they are interesting because they've been on many acquisition lists for Microsoft as well. Right. They've been one that Microsoft has been keeping their eye on for a long time. And down the road, who knows? Who knows? Again, they're always looking for talent. Poland, Microsoft's wanted to move into Poland, into that Eastern Europe stuff for a while now. Certainly a potential. So yeah, good shout out there, Mav. Definitely 100%. Let's run through the big list here, Mav. The consideration set that they put out. They had this consideration set that they put out, and they gathered Xbox Game Pass data, top 250 companies in PC and console by accumulated hours over the last 6 months, Steam stats, top 100 games by current users, and existing development partners currently working with Xbox and with industry relationships. This is a pretty big list. We're not obviously going to touch on all of these, but this is the type of list that I was talking about in the beginning of this when I said Xbox was going much bigger than we ever were, right? So this is one of them here. So it starts off with 11-bit studios, which Frostpunk and this War of Mine, and they just signed a deal with 11-bit studios to bring their games to Game Pass. That just happened this week as well. So interesting, they are on this list, Mav. And now we got a Game Pass deal. Frostpunk 2, which is in development. It's a strategy game, right? It's a strategy game where you got to build up your city. But you got to worry about freezing to death. You got to make sure you got to go explore the world, send out, you got to control, you got to have scavengers go out and try to find new stuff. Of course, there's enemies, there's, environmental stuff that happens, and you got to keep your town from freezing and losing all of your townspeople. So Frostpunk 2 is now coming to Game Pass, but 11-bit studios on here. 4A Games, another good studio. A44, another good studio, right, Mav? And if there's any you want to jump in on, let me know. Asobo, which we talked about, right, Mav? Asobo.
Asobo makes sense. Certain Affinity as well. Like
yes.
Like and for me, I've talked about this. Like it's so crazy, man. That so many of these that we've talked about just randomly, like off the cuff, without any kind of like any kind of like rumors.
Correct.
Right. Like Certain Affinity, there was no rumors behind that whatsoever.
Correct.
You know.
Correct.
Some of these that we've just talked off the cuff about, Asobo, we mentioned that as well, that we thought it would be a good fit, especially because they're locked into doing flight sim and all in these other things, and you know, but like Certain Affinity, I've brought up a couple times, and
of course we all have, yes.
I think that it's almost like a necessity for Microsoft to get Certain Affinity, because of how entrenched they are with so many of the Xbox games that they're making. We know that they're invested in Halo, right? Or helping with Halo stuff. They've helped for ever since Halo 2 on Halo stuff, right? With ever since Max Hoberman left Bungie and formed Certain Affinity, they've been helping with Halo stuff. They've helped with Call of Duty stuff. So if ABK happens, that's a big thing. They've helped with Doom multiplayer, right? All these different things. Now they also have this Monster Hunter type game they're supposed to be making, Project Suerte or whatever with Xbox as well. But being that they're so crucial to a lot of things that Xbox owns and has worked on, especially now with Halo, losing, and we'd also found out that they helped early on with Perfect Dark, which I was surprised at that, but that came out as well. I don't know if that was the best fit for the talent at Certain Affinity, but maybe so. Who knows? The article that we read appeared to think not as well. But I could not imagine how Microsoft would feel if Sony acquired Certain Affinity to help with Bungie.
Correct.
Because there's a history there as well, right? Correct. So, like, you know that Sony has all these multiplayer franchises are trying to get into all this live service stuff, and Certain Affinities, what they excel at and have in the past is multiplayer, right? Max Hoberman, who's the founder of Certain Affinity, is pretty much the godfather of matchmaking. So, like, you got to think about what that would mean for Microsoft if Sony would get them. Where would they turn to at that point? With support for all of these multiplayer games that Microsoft has, right? So, I think it's a necessity, and we talked about that. So, seeing it on this list and so high up on it as well, I don't know if the placement means anything, but
they were in alphabetical order on this.
Okay, well, so the C means something. It's a C letter, you know. It's high up on the list. No, I think I think it would be crucial for Microsoft to acquire Certain Affinity, so they don't get acquired by.
And I think they probably know that as well. Right. I think they're well aware of the high priority ones that they probably know that they got to try. Again, it's up to Certain Affinity. It's not.
For sure. You can't just go buy hostile, take them over, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could try, but again, that's not what happens in this industry, and Phil's not going to do it, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
But the good news for Microsoft, if they try, then they're not less likely to sell to Sony either, right?
Correct. They give Microsoft a heads up, much like Todd did for ZeniMax to Phil and let him know that Sony was trying to buy Starfield. You're much more likely to get a deal if they eventually do decide, as long as they know you're interested. And I think that Microsoft will always be interested, even if Certain Affinity isn't right now. Avalanche, of course, Avalanche Studios is on this list, making Contraband right now with Microsoft. They are here. We had lots of rumors about Avalanche, Mav, potentially even being announced at the E3, right? We remember those rumors going around that we were going to get some more announcements. So Avalanche is on here. Exalot Games, Behavior Interactive, Blackbird Interactive, Bluebird Team is on here, Bohemia Interactive. And of course, these lists are older, folks. So some of these studios situations have changed as well. Some of them have gotten bigger investments
right. This
from
was
outside
a
sources.
2021 list, correct?
Yes, 2021 list, I think, is when this one was put up. Yes. Bohemia, or let's see, I went through that. Bohemia Interactive, Bonfire Studios, Bonus XP, Bosa Studios, Bungie. Again, we know the situation with Bungie, that's changed. Capybara Games, CD Projekt Red is on this list, one we've mentioned once or twice. If you really want to wrap up the Western RPG market, really lock it down, you go get CDPR, and pretty much that's it, man. You got a bunch of AA developers.
And you know that Microsoft's done a lot of marketing with them as well.
Yes, they have. Yes,
Keanu Reeves was where at the Xbox Showcase.
Yes, he was. They've got a great relationship with CD Projekt Red. Of course, the rumors have flipped now, where people are saying Sony could be interested in CD Projekt Red. The problem with CD Projekt Red is that it is tied with the Polish government.
Right.
The Polish government basically funds a part of that studio. That's a part of their country. That's what they do. They have a program that incentivizes developers. And obviously they helped fund Cyberpunk 2077. The Polish government did, and they actually investigated CDPR when Cyberpunk came out, and the last gen versions especially were broken. They actually investigated the studio over it. I don't know if there was any findings ever publicly published, but that's how wrapped up the government is. That's where it gets a little dicey with buying them. Don't know how that would necessarily work, but interesting they're on here. Certain Affinity, which we just talked about, of course. Coldwood Interactive, Colossal Order, Counterplay Games, Crytek, I know of Wishlist. Many people have Crytek on it, of course, to get the Crytek engine. And of course, so that we can get some sequels, right, to beloved Rise, Son of Rome, right? Many people just want Crytek so we can get sequels. I understand why. Crytek used to be the pillar, used to be one of the bars setters with the Crytek engine for what they could do. But, they've fallen on their own hard times. But still talented group over there, obviously. So Crytek is interesting. Deck 13, great little dev studio there. Deck 13 has made some cool games. Digital Extremes, Don't Nod Entertainment, another great studio. Obviously narrative-driven games, but they're branching out. We're getting, obviously, Jusant is coming to Game Pass. That's that rock climbing game from them. And then we're getting the Ghosts, and I forget the whole title. I forget the name of it. Anyways, they are coming out with a lot of different style games, not just their narrative driven games so much anymore. They're going to have great stories, but just not specifically that genre. So they're branching out. Don't Now would be an awesome purchase. Dovetail Games, Drinkbox Studios, another freaking cool studio that makes awesome indie title games. We've seen a bunch of them on Game Pass. Dreamhaven, Ember Lab, another good one. Face Punch Studios, Fat Shark, Mav. We talked about Fat Shark back in the day a couple times. Obviously, they do the Warhammer games. Vermintide, obviously Warhammer 40K Darktide, which we just talked about. But Fat Shark has been, really entwined with Xbox too. Xbox supports a lot of Warhammer 40K games, and Fat Shark is a good developer outside of the Darktide problems. They are generally a good AA developer. Final Strike Games, Finji, Fireproof Studios, Fluff Fairy Games, From Software. Folks.
Yeah.
Mav, go ahead. What would you think if Microsoft went and actually got From Software?
That would be like you think yes.
I think this was prior to is prior to Elden Ring. I think so.
Like post Elden Ring world. Because there's like FromSoft, which is you got to say this about FromSoft though. I mean they're been amazing for a long time, and even back to 360 days and before then, like they have made quality game after quality game after quality game. Lots of different genres, right? And they have kind of settled into defining this Souls genre that has become so successful. Yeah, you're on mute. I know you're trying to call me out for accidentally.
No, I thought you. I was on mute. I thought you were gonna say sexy. I thought you were gonna go with it. I was like, that's a good word for it. It is sexy these days, right? Souls games are sexy.
Yeah, these sexy games. successful Souls games and stuff. So they've kind of defined that genre. And now that they pretty much have become the owners of that genre in a way,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I mean, like there's Souls likes, right?
Correct.
And then there's the creators of Souls games, right? So you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
As big of a genre that's become now, with Elden Ring being the piece of resistance of that genre now.
Oh, oui.
It's sexy. Acquiring them would make it would be a loud acquisition.
Oh yeah,
right. I mean, you announce that regardless if it's Sony, if it's Microsoft, or whoever, if you acquire From Software, that is a monster move because you're talking about one of the most popular developers in the world, right? As far as like, you trust what they put out, right? One of the most look forward to games right now from you is Armored Core 6, which is a FromSoft game. If it happened, if they acquired From Software, I would just be asking, hey, you remember Chrome Hounds, right? Now that was published by Sega, I believe.
Yes, it was.
I think Sega probably owns the IP. I'm not sure, right? But I would be looking at what's next. You know, what's next? What else is FromSoft going to do? But they put out games pretty frequently,
and they're trying to get faster. They said too. They want to get back on a bigger schedule.
Even with that, the Elden Ring took forever, right? Besides that, though, like they still release games. Like it wasn't that long before since Elden Ring came out that we got this Armored 6 announcement. You know,
correct. And
before that,
people didn't even know this was making. They didn't even know they were making this game. You had to go back to an article 6 years ago when they talked about it and said that that was actually in the works. Nobody even remembered that. So
you had multiple Demon Souls games, multiple Dark Souls games. You have Bloodborne, right? You have Armored Core. You know, you have Elden Ring now, and it's just so much stuff that they do, man. I think it would be a great acquisition that would also fill some needs as well with the East.
I don't know. Like I said, I don't know at this point anymore. If that's possible now with the Elden Ring success and obviously where they're moving,
their value has skyrocketed.
And their value to Bandai Namco as well has skyrocketed. Sony's invested in
Bandai Namco. Does Bandai own the rights to the franchise Elden Ring? The IP?
I don't think so. I think From owns it, but I think Bandai does their publishing, right? So
because a lot of the Souls games are Bandai Namco, right? So
correct. It's certainly possible, but I don't know. I think they own the IP. I still think they do, but
also real quick, go. Hitman hit us with a $10 sticker.
Thank you for the sticker.
It's a sticker.
Awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I love stickers. Me and my sister used to collect stickers back in the day. We were part of that generation.
Were they scratch and sniff?
We had scratch and sniff stickers. We had puppy stickers. We had all sorts of stickers.
My sister had a sticker.
Yes,
my sister had a sticker book.
Yep.
And it was full of scratch and sniffs.
Yep.
And I used to obsessively go grab it and scratch all the food ones. You know,
that doesn't shock me, sir. Doesn't shock me in the least. Nope. It does not. Some of them were really gross though. But so we got From Software, Frontier Developments, Funcom, of course, makers of the Dune games, the new Dune MMO, and Dune Spice, the RTS, Dune Spice Wars, I should say. They also make Conan, the MMO as well. That's an interesting one on this list, and certainly could still be a possibility there. Gearbox. Oh, my boy, Randy. Gearbox would have been Microsoft owned already. Before Gearbox sold themselves to Embracer Group, there is a very strong rumor out there that they actually, because they were shopping themselves, and they approached Microsoft Xbox first and said, hey, would you like to buy us? And the story goes that they said, well, we'd be interested, but does the deal include Randy? And of course, Randy said, yeah, this is my baby. I'm sticking around. And Microsoft and Xbox said, no, thank you. And that's when they went over to Embracer Group. So the crazy one, who likes to ski a lot, Mr. Randy Pritchford, kind of shot down that deal with Xbox. So interesting that this was on the list, because I think they were shopping themselves prior to this list. So they might have just gotten on the radar for Xbox when Xbox created this. But anyways, Gearbox is in there. I would love to see it. Obviously, Embracer Group has its own issues, and they might be doing some fire sales. That's why I said Xbox has got to get this ABK deal done. They got to go swoop up Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, who've been in the holding tank over there. And then, I mean, I guess if Randy's ready to step aside, why don't you grab Gearbox while you're at it too? I would love it. Anyways, Gearbox, Gen Design, Ghost Ship Games, Giant Squid, Giant Software, Harmonix Music Systems, Hazelight Studios, another good studio, Heart Machine, Hello Games. Can you imagine that, Mav? No Man's Sky and Starfield.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah, Hello Games. Yep. Why not? Why not? Lock it down.
I mean, No Man's Sky, they could give Todd Howard some tips on how to make a No Man's Sky clone.
Whatever. Todd just stole all of it anyways, man. Don't worry about it. That's all Starfield is. Hidden Path Entertainment, Hinterland Studios, High Res Studios, Housemark. Housemark was on here. IO Interactive, which was on a finalist list. One of these lists had finalists. IO Interactive, again, we talked about it at length, Mav. This was a big rumor going around prior to ABK. IO was about to be acquired. We know, at least according to the internal older documents, that Project Dragon was an exclusive Microsoft game. Now, again, since that time, I think a month ago or 2 months ago, they started a hiring advertisement, right? They started indicating they wanted to hire, and they were advertising Project Dragon as a online kind of MMO type game. And that made people like Jez question whether or not it was still Xbox exclusive or if something had changed a little bit. But according to the internal docs, it's still showing as an exclusive, but they were older docs. But IO Interactive with the Hitman series, Mav, again, third-party stealth games. They're making the James Bond game, which people forget as well. IO Interactive would be a huge get. We were all for this, weren't we?
Oh, yeah. I mean, IO is... Well, I think it came out the trial that Project Dragon game is an Xbox exclusive as well, did it not?
I don't know if that was the docs or if that was actually said in court. I don't know for sure.
I saw people. I didn't hear it or see it myself. I saw people saying it. On Twitter.
So it potentially could have, and if that's the case, great. I'm all for it. Anything IO is going to touch. If Microsoft is still funding that game, awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Fantasy. Come on.
Yeah. IO Interactive is proven to be able to make a successful franchise.
Yes.
That's all you need to know.
Polished games as well.
Polished games, support the games with new content, come up with new ways of also releasing their games to add value to the consumers as well, but like they did with the Hitman collections and stuff. They
transformed that game.
Yeah.
Their roguelite mode now. It's crazy, man. They got so much to it.
And then you also have they're working on Bond.
Yes. Yep.
Right. So that plus the other thing, it's a studio that's in a good place, that's growing. They build a lot of their own tech as well, I believe, behind what they create. Like people like that is you need to seek out. Right.
Yes. 100%. Proven industry veterans who've shown that they can make it at a high level.
Yeah.
Again, IO Interactive has done that. You can say, well, all they've done is the Hitman series, and they haven't proven anything outside of that. I will take that Hitman series as proof enough for me personally that they know what they're doing, and that I have faith in the next games are going to be just as high quality as Hitman, and that they are going to be successful no matter what genre they try, including a MMO like high fantasy type RPG. That will cement them right there if they pull that off as well. But I think this is the perfect time when the ABK deal gets done that Microsoft that's one of the priority studios that I would definitely bring on board. IO Interactive is on their way up 100%.
Could you imagine Hitman with a bigger budget and like,
man, that's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. Oh my God. It'd be so good, brother. It'd be it already is, but again, that studio, who knows what else they could do now that they're going off in these different genres. You know, who knows? Maybe they'll find even more success outside of the Hitman series. And again, then you got another studio that
they're
does
definitely
other things.
branching out now that they,
Yes.
they another failed opportunity by Square Enix to really,
100%.
take care of their developers and stuff.
Just don't know how to. They don't know how to handle Western developers.
I don't think they know how to handle any developers.
They don't know how to handle any. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Unless it's like small teams that work on some of these like smaller JRPGs that release on the Switch and stuff like that. You know, that have the small budgets.
Octopath Travelers.
Yeah.
You know,
big budget games, they don't know how to handle. That's just time and time again, man. Like, I'm not like,
I think Fantasy 16 got the scores, so
it got the scores, but they're missing on some sales, right? I think it's a good successful game right now for them, but the other Final Fantasy sold more, the last one, right? So are they missing on sales because they didn't release on Xbox and PC?
Right, of course they did. That's why they sold less than they did for Final.
Will they complain about this later?
Final Fantasy 15 does not have as much hype as Final Fantasy 16 did coming to launch, and Final Fantasy 15 sold 5 million copies out the gate, and Final Fantasy 16 sold 3 million. So, and Final Fantasy 16 was long before launch being claimed as a Game of the Year candidate. Final Fantasy 15 wasn't hitting with everybody. Even back then, when the initial people were starting to review it or preview it, some people liked it, some people didn't because of the boy band aspect, obviously, and because it went away from traditional Final Fantasy. Now people have gotten used to non-traditional Final Fantasy to a larger degree. Now they went back to high fantasy, which again, I will always say is their strongest position. They do the best Final Fantasies when they go to this high fantasy stuff. And they knocked it out of the park with the scores. Critics absolutely love it. People are cheering it on as Game of the Year, even though it's not anywhere near traditional Final Fantasy, because you got the Devil May Cry combat lead working on this game, and that's the combat that's in it. So a lot of people are like, what is this? But people love it, Mav. But it still only sold 3 million. They could have sold more for sure. 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
We got, go ahead.
What else is on the list?
Iron Gate Studio, Jackbox Games, JP Games, Larian Studios, Baldur's Gate 3, small studio, Mav, and we know they are having problems. We got an update today in a couple different ways for Baldur's Gate 3. So they pushed up. Yes, that's right. They're releasing earlier than expected the PC version. That is coming out on August the 6th, I want to say, or 1st. One of those two. They pushed it up to kind of give itself room away from Starfield, right? So they pushed up the PC version. The PlayStation 5 version is still coming out late August, okay? Still no word on Xbox versions because, they're working on the split screen aspect, but IGN actually did an article today and interviewed Larian Studios, and they did confirm, according to IGN and the developer, that the problem is the Xbox Series S. They cannot get it running properly in split screen mode. Microsoft will not make an exception for the Series S because they do have feature parity clauses. When a developer makes a game for the Series X, the Series S has to have the same features in it. They will not give them an exception. Microsoft engineers are supposedly working with Larian now, trying to figure out the problems so they can announce the Xbox version. But as of right now, we still don't have a release date for Xbox. But this studio, if Microsoft will require Larian, again, their storytelling, their world building, their RPGs, much like In Exile, Mav, they would have an opportunity to go big. Not to say that Baldur's Gate 3 isn't, because we just got word today. There's some ungodly, like 2 million lines of dialogue or something like that. Something insane. Like they themselves said, people don't realize how big this game is. Like this is going to be a gigantic game, but it is more of a traditional CRPG style game, much like In Exile was doing themselves with Wasteland. Larian Games would be an interesting buy right here, Matt, for sure.
Yeah, Larian was on my wish list before.
Yeah.
Because Divinity, the 2 Divinity games that came out are some of the best ports to console of CRPGs that I've seen. It's a shame for me right now that Baldur's Gate 3 has not been yet announced for Xbox. because when I found out that they were making it, right? I've talked to you about this before, that Neverwinter Nights is one of my like favorite games of all time. Back on PC, I used to play it all the time when it came out. And Larian didn't make that. It was BioWare, right?
Yep.
But BioWare also made Baldur's Gate back then, and Baldur's Gate was kind of like a precursor or forefather of Neverwinter Nights, like the same genre, same style of game, and all that kind of stuff. Neverwinter Nights pushing in a different direction, going more 3D style with the art and stuff, but very similar. And Larian, that had proven themselves now in that genre, was now going to be making the next Baldur's Gate game, which I was super excited about. I've been waiting for it. It's been in game preview on in Steam early access. I mean, for like a long time, but I've been waiting because I want the final experience, right? And I wanted to play it on console because I know that Larian does amazing console ports based on the Divinity games. And based on the fact and how the best benefit for me, Pong, is how good they are at that aspect. Again, like we talked about it with Paradox as well. I think Larian's even more talented at this, like taking a genre and kind of building the game with the mindset originally that this needs to be a great experience on console. Right. And they built the Divinity games with that in mind. And if you take that talented team that has proven to make these great games and give them opportunities to shine and more money and make these different games, like what else are they capable of? You know what I mean? Like, I would just love those games to be in Game Pass. The one thing about Larian is they are they're not huge, right? And they do take a long time to get a game out, right? So
but that would be expanded.
Output wouldn't be as frequent as something like a From Software or like any of these other bigger studios and stuff, but it's one that speaks to my heart with what the kind of games that they make and how they make them, right?
Correct. 100%. Sandbox CRPG games is what they make. Your decisions matter in these games. Like you can affect the whole entire world. Like it's crazy. And they said that Baldur's Gate 3 is on another level with that they've never done this big before. So it's gonna be interesting. And I just looked it up. August 3rd is when it's launching on PC. September 6th is when it's launching on PS5. That's where I was getting that 6th date in there. So August 3rd for PC, September 6th for PS5. So I just wanted to make sure I got that corrected for everybody that's listening out there. We got Level 5, we got Lizard Cube, Manticore Games, Midwinter Entertainment, Mercury Steam, Moon Studios, of course. Mundfish is on here, another good studio. Night School Studio, No Breaks Games, Oxide Games, Paladin Studios, Pearl Abyss. We talked about Pearl Abyss before, Korean game, right? Oh, God. Pearl Abyss would be freaking amazing. Steel would be all about that. People Can Fly. We talked about them. Play Dead, Playful Studios, Playtonic, Proletariat is on here as well, which Blizzard, interestingly enough, has acquired. Proletariat is now owned by Blizzard. Rebellion Developments, Red Hill Games, Reflector Entertainment, Relic Entertainment. Ooh, that'd be another good one right there. Remedy. Go ahead, get them. Roblox, that'd be interesting. They're worth a lot of money. SCS Software, Second Dinner, Shark Mob, Splash Damage, another cool studio. Starbreeze Studios, freaking fantastic. Stardock Corporation, Striking Distance Studios, Stoic, which again, we now know is, what is it called? Tower. What is it? Tower.
Towerborn.
Towerborn. Thank you. Towerborn. Stoic Studios, that was just announced. Studio MDHR, Super Giant Games, freaking, oh God, that'd be so cool. Super Massive Games, System Era Softworks, Tail Worlds Entertainment, Tantalus Media, Tarsier Studios, Team Cherry, another cool little game. Techland, Mav, we had Techland mentioned previously, of course.
If you do them, bring back Cala Juarez, please.
Yes, please do that. Techland would benefit greatly under this. Again, another studio that supports their games forever.
And also, didn't Microsoft help with fund parts or help them with Dying Light 2?
Yes, sir.
Some
Yes,
aspects.
sir. That was the rumor that they did invest money into Dying Light 2. That's where the rumor started, that they were up for acquisition. It looks like they were on their list. Tequila Works, that game company, the behemoth, the Molasses Flood, Thunder Lotus Games, Thunderful. Oh, great indies. Oh my God. Tiny Build, Toca Boca, Typhoon Studios, Us Two. And then they also had a list of publishers, Mav. 505 Games. Okay. Annapurna. Yes, please. Again, just announced today, right? Annapurna did that we are getting a oh my God, my old brain. I've got too many things on my list here. They are coming out with whatchamacallit, Mav?
Annapurna?
Yeah, Annapurna just announced today their first independently.
Blade Runner. Yeah,
Blade Runner. Thank you, Blade Runner 2033.
Yeah, 2033. Like
yeah, it's going to take place in between the two movies. So yeah, Blade Runner. My God, my brain's just fried. Blade Runner, and again, that's their first independently developed, fully in-house developed, I should say, game.
And they also announced like 8 games are coming to Game Pass.
Game Pass. Because they had a showcase today, and we can hop into that real quick and read those off too. But Annapurna would be fantastic. Devolver. Oh my God, Devolver would be fantastic. Oh my God, it'd be so cool. Focus, Home Interactive, of course. Focus is going to be up for probably Publisher of the Year with how many games they got coming out, including Atlas Fallen, which is coming out in the next couple months here. Focus, Home Interactive is making big moves out here. They are publishing a ton. They would be giant. Media Indie Exchange, Paradox, which we talked about, Raw Fury, Sega is on here, of course, and Team 17, again, another great publisher, indie titles, smaller titles. Oh boy, Mav, that was a big list. Brother.
That's a huge list.
That's a huge list,
and that's of just potential interest and
yes,
targets that they could potentially have that would be a good fit for them. Right?
Correct. They also had. I'm not going to go through all these. We just did the major list.
Do you think this is Phil's wish list?
Yeah. Yes. I think that he is well aware of these wish lists, as he is the one who has to go to Miss Hood and Satya and convince them of purchases. It was confirmed in court today that Amy Hood actually has the ability to okay any purchase under 500 million or less. She can okay any purchase. They don't have to go to the board. They don't have to go to Satya. Nothing. That's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I know there's not, I mean, a lot of devs are worth, more than 500 million, but there's still a lot of smaller teams that are under a 500 million mark that she can just go, yeah, Phil, go get them. That's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I wonder, like, if the point of this list, right, is you start here, right? You identify potential interest that you have or you're interested. Now you go and look, okay, who's more likely willing to do this, right? So then you get funneled down, and then you keep funneling it down, and out of a list like this, maybe you get a few acquisitions, right?
Correct.
That just everything has to be a perfect situation. You know what I mean? Like, you have to look at it and be like, okay, well, is this gonna make sense for them? Is it gonna make sense for us? And all these different scenarios. So you start with a list like this, and then it gets worked down,
and then you whittle it down. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then maybe like, okay, well, Sega's not possible now, but we working on that still. We have this cloud partnership gaming deal that we're doing with them, and we're very closely aligned. So that's in the works, but maybe we focus on that for now, and maybe we'll focus on and see who's next or who's available. What's been clear also based on that list and where they were, and also stuff that Phil Spencer's talked about in interviews about, they're not done, is that this ABK deal has held them up from getting any of these other acquisitions.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
So, not that they're going to buy all 100, right? That they're maybe a handful, maybe 3, or whatever. Maybe another publisher, maybe 2 smaller studios or whatever,
maybe 10 smaller studios,
maybe 10 smaller studios. Yeah.
Right. Again, when we started talking about acquisitions, Matt, way back 2 years ago, plus when we were looking at what Microsoft, after the ZeniMax acquisition was announced, and we started looking at what Microsoft was going to need to do to feed the beast that is Game Pass. And all we were looking at was content for a subscription service. We weren't looking at PC market. We weren't considering the mobile market at the time, right? We weren't thinking about that. We were just talking about what would they need to do to insulate themselves from the industry. And my guess was 30. I think we were all roughly in the same boat. 30 plus studios at least, right? You're going to need 30 plus studios. Now seeing these lists and kind of understanding what they're going, and now including PC and mobile into this, I think they're looking at 40 plus studios, Mav, eventually. I think that's really a number that they want to hit to make sure that they have the content, no matter what anybody else does, no matter how many deals Sony cuts, that they are never without content to fill in gaps, to make sure that they have diverse lineups, and to make sure that they can cover all these different ecosystems, right? PC, mobile, console, streaming, all of it. They are looking seriously, I think, at 40 plus studios by the end of this, when they're all said and done, at least. There was a final watch list, to your point too, Mav. We did get a look at one final watch list. This was one of the big boo-boos, because this actually had notes on it, which included what they were looking at for each of these companies. And this was a final watch list, I believe, from 2021, I want to say. So they had gap reasons that they were looking at these, and this first set is from audience expansion. Thunderful is on there. Assets, expertise, and cross-gen casual mobile games. Yes. Supergiant Games, asset, developer of top indie titles, including Hades. Again, Supergiant would be awesome. Niantic. I'd never heard of this one. Niantic. Thank you. Niantic.
I've heard of them.
What they do? I don't remember.
Let me look it up.
Yeah, look it up real quick.
They make some pretty common stuff.
Very strong technology infrastructure, focus on XR and innovative mobile experiences.
Pokemon Go.
Oh, okay.
I think. Let me double check that. Mobile games. Yeah, I want to see. Yeah, Pokemon Go.
Okay.
End game proving ground. I don't know. Let's see. Pikmin Bloom.
Okay.
Harry Potter Wizards Unite. Catan. Worlds Explorers. Transformers Heavy Metal. It seemed like a lot of mobile stuff.
Yeah, mobile stuff.
Yeah, I think I've heard of them because of Pokemon Go.
Probably, yeah. And I just didn't remember because I didn't get into Pokemon Go at all. So, let's see here. Where did that list go? I just lost that list. Why was that list here? There we go. Playrix, strong franchises and content breadth, world class in designing, making, and running successful games. Of course, Zynga was on here. This was prior, when they were trying to acquire Zynga, until they decided not to, and Take-Two swooped up Zynga. Strong franchises, content breadth, world-class in designing, making, and running successful games. And then they had 3 more on here. This was for the gap of engagement and social interaction, along with audience expansion. Bungie, of course, was on there, owner of AAA franchises with an established ability to ship and scale games. IO Interactive, owner of AAA franchises with specialized expertise in regional IP game launches. And Scopely, very strong tech infrastructure to support non-owned IP, opportunity to complement XGS's IP. So that was a list of eight finalists, right, back in the day. I think this was 2021, that they were actually really considering. And obviously Bungie, we know what happened there. The word is they were approached, and Bungie was, in talks with Microsoft, but they wanted too much money. Microsoft said, you guys aren't worth it. And then of course they signed with Sony. But any of these other ones on this finalist list, I would also watch once this ABK deal is done. Thunderful, Supergiant Games, IO Interactive, obviously, again, Zynga's off there, but all these ones I think will still be on there, Mav, for sure.
Yeah, Thunderful. Yeah, like that partnership is very tight. Mm-hmm. I think it's another Sarah Bond thing, because I think she even spoke at their conference, their press conference that Thunderful had before. So I think there's a very tight relationship forming between Thunderful and Xbox. Was 11-bit on one of those lists?
Yeah, that was the number. That was the first one I mentioned on the big list that was up there that they signed the Game Pass deal with.
Right. So there's that one, and I gotta admit, when I was reading the name Frostpunk, I didn't remember. I was like, "What is it?" I went back and I googled. The box art is familiar to me. I've seen the box art. I have not played it though. And I did recognize the other game that y'all mentioned too. World the
War
is Mine. Yeah. I recognize that game as well as two games I have not played.
Right.
But it's interesting to see a publisher like that, right, or developer, whatever. I think it's a small publisher that makes their own games. I don't know how they work, but anyway, announce publicly themselves a Game Pass deal.
Correct. Yep.
Have we seen that before?
Oh.
For multiple games.
I'm trying to think if we have. What was the other?
We've had studios like today, like Annapurna announced games coming to Game Pass, but just as a statement, we've made a deal with Xbox.
Yeah, no, not that I can think of. Not that wasn't first announced at one of the showcases or one of Microsoft shows or something like that. No, I think this might be the only one I can think of where they just put out a tweet saying, "Hey, we signed a deal with Microsoft for the Game Pass."
Yeah,
interesting. So that is interesting.
It's interesting to me because it almost could be like another, like, what if Microsoft had, they're talking and they're having all these meetings and stuff, and they're saying like, well, for us, maybe we don't have to acquire these studios. We can make larger investments into them and deals with them, like they ended up doing with Sega, right?
Correct.
A strong, close partnership with a publisher. It seems like kind of what they're doing with Thunderful, also, right?
Yes.
Now we have multiple games announced coming to Game Pass from Annapurna. Like, what if the strategy that Microsoft has with these publishers now is going to them and say, well, short of acquisition, we're going to give you a larger investment, not just for
your catalog,
not just for one game, but for multiple game deals of future games, right? And past catalog. And people say, well, but have they done that before? Well, I think it started with Sega, and I think they've seen the success potentially of that with Sega, because what happened after the cloud partnership deals announced? We got a couple of the Game Pass games day one, right? Plus also all those Yakuza games came to Game Pass, right? The catalog of Yakuza games. We got Persona games eventually. Had to be made ports, and then those come to Game Pass as well. And then new Persona games are coming to Game Pass. Now you have 11-bit coming out there saying, we are announcing a deal for Game Pass. You have Annapurna have multiple games announced for Game Pass, right? So this is different for me in a little bit different situation than we've had just a random game announced for Game Pass here and there. Now you're having groups from some of these publishing publishers, smaller and larger now, making Game Pass announcements.
That's correct.
And so
could be new strategy.
Just putting that out there. Just a thought.
Yep. Nope. It's a good thought, because it is becoming more of a pattern with the smaller publishers, with those indie publishers, especially to gobble up. And we saw that, Don't Nod as well, right? Jusant's coming. They've been getting closer to some of these smaller publishers and really working much bigger deals, as you put it, with them. And I think that is maybe an alternative, as you pointed out, to actual acquiring, or it's to establish a stronger relationship. So down the road, they have worked with each other. They understand each other. They see it fits. They see the philosophies fit. They enjoy working with each other. And it just makes it that much easier down the road to, start gobbling some up. Because again, they're not done.
Could you imagine being like one of these smaller publishers and you're always worried about financials and all these kind of things, and you have Microsoft say, okay, we're going to give you this fat check, not just for one game, for multiple games. And guess what? You're still going to be able to sell games on PlayStation and release them other places, but just put them on Game Pass, right?
Put them on Game Pass. Yep.
And that way we know there's a consistent pipeline of games coming to Game Pass day one still, right?
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
if I was a publisher like that, a small publisher, would be like, okay, sign me up, baby,
Yeah.
because guess what? Like we've heard from Microsoft themselves in that case, like the amount of game sales compared to Sony is less, right? So
Yep.
if you're a publisher like that, okay, how many games am I going to sell on Xbox versus PlayStation?
Correct.
Anyway, so what's the benefit to me?
Mitigates
Maybe
the
I
risk.
take the money and then we do those, and then guess what? We have some security as a company, right? Like,
Mitigates
um,
the risk. I mean, again, because we've
yeah,
heard how hard it is. People never understand fully how hard it is for these smaller developers and publishers. Every game is a risk. Every game is a high risk game. We even heard that from Tim Schafer.
yeah,
Obviously, different scenario because he was acquired. Double Fine was acquired. But one of the first things he said was, my whole over half of my job when we were independent, and this is Double Fine, a
yeah,
well-respected, one of the most respected studios. Tim Schafer, one of the most respected developers, game directors out there, one of the most respected creators, period. He said over half my job was just running around trying to get funding for our games.
yeah,
And he said that all that energy spent there can now be into making games. So even though these smaller ones aren't being necessarily acquired by Microsoft right now, they get that Game Pass money up front, which mitigates the risk, which puts money into the bank account. They know that they're paying their devs. They know that some of that risk from publishing a smaller game, like you said, Mav, always wondering how many sales are we actually going to get out of this? Is this going to be, a 20,000 game seller, or do we have the potential for a 200,000 game seller, right? Indie games are on a total different level than AA and AAA games. So for them, every sale counts. Well, all of a sudden now with Game Pass money that we've heard from a lot of them, you've already guaranteed yourself a certain number of games. And a lot of these deals are beneficial more so to the developer than they are to actually Microsoft. Microsoft, sure, gets the game day and date. Sure, it's another game to add to the library. But when you talk about indie games, it's an addition to the diversity. And sure, you're going to get some traction there. Some people are going to try it out. But more so for the devs, a lot of these deals, from what we've heard, are cut favorably towards them, where they get like whatever they thought like their max sales was. Game Pass money is accounting for most of that max. And so now it's gravy after that point. So now they're almost guaranteed to make money off of that game. And that takes a huge burden off their shoulders and allows them to relax a little bit. And like you said, start thinking about the next game map instead of counting each and every sale all the time, just hoping that you break even and then maybe starting to think about that next game, right? So, because got to worry about that funding for the next one as well. This makes it a lot easier, for sure. So we heard that from the High on Life devs as well. They talked about that they, without the Game Pass deal, they wouldn't have been able to start thinking about a sequel right away. But now that they had the Game Pass deal, and because of how successful it was on Xbox, they instantly started thinking and started working on that sequel to High on Life. That's never a guarantee for some of these smaller devs. So really good points there, Mav. Appreciate that, brother, for adding that in there. Real quick, closing arguments have finished. Closing arguments finished about an hour ago at this point. So I just want to read some updates from Florian Mueller, Foss Patents on Twitter, of course. He's been all over this thing since day one. So I just wanted to bring up some of the closing stuff if you guys didn't get a chance to listen to it and you kind of want to know where it ended on.
Poglaw had some thoughts too on basically
Okay, cool. I'll flip over to him and read some of his too. So they were talking about some of the final closing thoughts from the FTC were about specifically, obviously, being granted the preliminary injunction and why it should happen. And of course, Microsoft was arguing against it, but the FTC was saying it's going to be near impossible to unwind this deal if it goes through. That's why we need the preliminary injunction. She said the judge looking at the FTC says different evidence where very difficult to divest here the parent subsidiary relationship. She says if we stop the merger, there are some private equities. That's why we are here in such a rush. FTC now has to explain why there are equitable considerations that the deal should be killed when Microsoft would, that's what Judge Corley implied, hold Activision separate and it could be divested later. Updated assessment, Judge Corley's doubts about the equitable part strongly suggests that the FTC is not going to get to kill a vertical merger here based on speculation. The court may agree with parts of the cloud theory, but the FTC has to overcome multiple hurdles. Judge Corley now points out that this Call of Duty that is released in November will be released on the PlayStation existing Sony Activision agreement, wants FTC to address in submission tomorrow proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law. FTC now talking about it. Argument finished tomorrow at this time, 5 p.m. deadline, that's Pacific time, for proposed findings of fact and conclusion of law under seal. By Monday at noon, submit joint appendix of exhibits admitted. So decision is not likely on Monday. I think that's Foss's opinion. FTC asks about public versions of the findings of the filings. Judge Corley wants to clarify now when the public versions of the proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law would be filed. FTC points out that they need to talk to third parties. Original proposed findings are available in public versions, so Judge Corley is less concerned. Judge Corley will file her order under seal. Parties will then propose redactions. Knows someone may very well appeal. Judge says the parties did an extraordinary advocacy, recognizes tight guidelines. Judge recognizes that the FTC managed to keep up despite not having same resources of Microsoft. Also appreciated that many different attorneys on both sides were allowed to examine the witnesses. So that's where it stands. So most people are expecting a decision next week from Judge Corley. Everybody's been guessing when that's going to happen. Could be anytime. Obviously, with how she's positioned the filings for what did I say it was? She said that Monday at noon, submit joint appendix of exhibits admitted. So she's taking stuff on Monday, so she probably won't have a decision on Monday. I think she'll have it by Friday. She knows that the deadlines are tight. Some people are expecting it maybe the day after the 4th of July, but interesting past couple of weeks here, man, for sure.
Yeah.
With all this.
Yeah. And a lot of people are saying right now, and Hogue pointed to this as well.
Oh yeah. I was going to go ahead.
That, what it seems right now is like, she's just completely uninterested and has shot down the PlayStation and Call of Duty argument as well. Is the vibe people are getting. And when I was listening to the closing arguments, I mean, it seemed that way as well. Right. People were saying that she could potentially have enough questions about the cloud to grant the preliminary injunction. And it's just a possibility, right? So we don't know. And Hogue said it was like that's the wild card. Like, it's just the cloud thing is like up in the air, right? The interesting thing to me is the argument that was made regarding the validity of being able to use these agreements, right? Because the FTC is claiming you can't. Right. But we already know that if you look at the European Commission and their final decision was those remedies and the contracts and that Microsoft's willingness to bring those Activision games to those cloud competitors as a part of a concession with the EC increased competition.
Correct.
Which was also in seeing some of the transcript of the parts that we missed. I was kind of trying to read through as we were talking. Was a point that she made as well regarding subscription services. That like wouldn't, Call of Duty being on Game Pass make it more likely for PlayStation to put their games day one on PlayStation, which would increase competition. Right. Something like that. I don't remember. I don't know for sure if it was the judge that said that, if it was one of the lawyers. However,
basically, the FTC is arguing for the status quo to remain the same.
Yes.
That's really what it comes down to. They say the status quo is okay, that Sony's marketing deals and exclusive deals, and of course, Xbox does them as well, just to a different varying degree than Sony does, is all on the up and up. but actually acquiring things is not on the up and up. And I'll just read this real quote and I'll let you continue, Matt.
Yeah.
But Hogue also pointed out the FTC towards the end in response, I believe it was to the one I mentioned before where the FTC said, we've heard about the harms to Sony. And the judge said, this is not about the harms. This is about the harms to the consumer, not to Sony. Let's take a break. And I think that they came back with this because Hogue said, wild. FTC, quote, we're protecting consumers because if this deal is allowed, Sony will be forced to hurt consumers. and then Hogue goes, hard to see how that logic wouldn't prohibit basically any studio purchase.
Right.
And that's really what we've come down to. That's why I mentioned that.
Yeah, and it's kind of FCC's been taught so much Sony, PlayStation. I think the judge.
Jim Ryan said. Go back to what Jim Ryan said.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I don't think the judge is concerned about what Jim Ryan has to say, really, because he's not, but making the case really about the consumers, and it's not about. I think people's interpretation of harming a consumer is a little flawed. At times, people think that a PlayStation user not getting a piece of content is a harm to the consumer, right? In my opinion, that's status quo for the way the business operates. And whether you're acquiring the company to make that happen or if you are signing deals to make that happen, like exclusivity deals or whatever, the end result for the consumer is the same. And the consumer doesn't necessarily care who owns it. It's what you get access to. So whatever deal there is made still has the same end result to a consumer regarding exclusivity, right? Or regarding content, right? So when you're talking about harming consumers,
right?
If the FTC lawyers and Sony is trying to make a case about potentially a character skin not being available on PlayStation as a harm to the consumer, well, then PlayStation is aggressively, constantly harming consumers on other platforms by their actions as well.
Correct.
Now, you could say, well, but they don't own it and other people can pay for that.
Sure.
When you have a dominant market position, it also makes your deals more favorable for you, which then can be interpreted from some regulators as a abuse of dominant market position to keep your competition small, right? So, which can harm consumers then on the turn of like, well, if that may cause other platforms to have to increase their prices and all that kind of, and that's the arguments that they're making, right? So the fact is, like, I think that the whole arguing consumers, and I loved when the judge said this about, like, this is about a video game.
Correct.
Right.
And you saw the FTC try to shift it to Matt and try to say, well, it's not just about Call of Duty. It's about other Activision titles.
Right.
Like Diablo is really big too, as we pointed out. Yeah, it's too late for that nonsense, boys and girls.
When she said that, they try to say, like, it's not our job to justify how important it is. It's about, how it affects the consumer, and that
you brought it up as the most important video game, like, of all time.
Right. So
basically the way you positioned it.
Like, and she put it into perspective, which was my main argument this whole time. Right. It's ridiculous for a whole $70 billion acquisition, everything to rest on the hinges of somebody not getting to play a certain game on a certain device. Right. It's just not important in the grand scheme of things. Right. It's not a extremely important thing. And there's lots of games made by lots of developers and lots of publishers, and there's lots of choice out there, and harming PlayStation's ability to market a game as the best place to play on their platform doesn't harm the consumer. It just potentially causes PlayStation to maybe have to be more competitive in other ways, which is pro-competitive, which is something else the judge had pointed out as well in this. So the PlayStation argument I think is just dead. Like I think, and which is interesting because that's what they spent most of the time on in this case. But but who knows? And I don't think any of us who've listened to this trial, and maybe because there's been so little talk about it, knows what she's going to decide about the cloud aspects, right?
That's the hard part, right?
And people are saying that maybe she bought into some of the FTC's arguments there.
Sure.
Right? Which for me, and what we talked about early on, would have been the stronger case to make, right? But even though it's a small market, it's undefined and all that kind of stuff, you can talk about, they had a better chance with that. And
Hoag's been saying that since day one.
Yeah. Because it is about control of potential with that. Now, I would argue that one publisher that currently doesn't put their games on those other places,
yes,
that's also status quo. Like if Microsoft owns the ABK right now, and they decided not to put their games on those cloud providers, nothing changes.
Correct.
Because they're not there.
Right.
Now, would the question is, would Microsoft be more likely to, or Activision Blizzard be more likely to in the future put their games on those cloud services? Right. Well, the only evidence we have, in my opinion, is that Microsoft has deals to do that such thing, and they have also made a concession with the European Commission to do such thing, in which currently there have been no plans announced for Activision Blizzard to.
Correct.
So if you were to weigh competition in that space, to say where are those consumers and how are these other competitors in that space going to be able to potentially have a chance to succeed, if you are determining that Activision Blizzard games are crucial and necessary for one of those platforms to be able to exist, you have a higher likelihood of those games being on those platforms if Microsoft acquires Activision Blizzard as opposed to Activision Blizzard staying independent.
Correct.
And that's what the European Commission has decided within their concessions, right? That's why they found it to be pro-competitive. Now, will Judge Corley take those deals into consideration, right?
At face value.
Right. Well, because, but we don't know, right? And we don't know if she will, and we don't know if she will believe the testimony that when they testify that they are going to, and all these things. We don't know, right? And that's the only thing. Now, the cloud aspect could be the thing that holds it up. But if you were to ask me right now, I would still say I'm like more confident than not that she does not grant the preliminary injunction.
Right. Did they prove that the cloud should be considered a separate market? That's another big one.
Yeah.
Did they prove that without a shadow of a doubt that the cloud market is a whole separate market from everything else? It's not just a delivery, right? It's not just another way of purchasing your games, but it is actually a market that needs to be taken seriously and be regulated before it really even begins. And obviously Microsoft had big plans for the cloud. We heard that obviously throughout the testimony. We knew that from the past. Satya's, when Satya was up on the stand, they pulled up all of his old stuff where he was talking about dominating cloud. Now, Satya's vision of cloud is much greater than just gaming, which should be readily apparent, right? He's talking about software in general. He's talking about the direction of Microsoft, all that kind of stuff. But the other thing that the judge, I believe, has to take into consideration is the testimony of Sarah Bond, where she said, now that we actually have stats and figures on cloud gaming usage, we are finding that people are not using it to game full time on, that in fact that they are using it, and it's a very, very small percentage of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers who even touch the cloud, that when they do, they are using it to try a game or to wait for a game to download, but they're not actually playing games on it. So right now it costs Microsoft more money for everybody who accesses the cloud and to stream xCloud than it's worth, that they are actually losing money. So does that technology ever ever surpass hardware to the point where more people are playing cloud? That's the big question here. And that's what the main focus should have been for the FTC, because again, because it's a nascent market, there's not a whole lot of facts.
Right.
When you're talking about the console market, there's facts. And you saw Judge Corley focus in, asking the FTC over and over again, explain to me how your expert economist witness came up with this 20% of people are going to leave PlayStation to go to Xbox. Did he take all these things into consideration? And they could not answer it definitively. But she was looking at straight numbers and facts. She's like, look, there are people who play for 2 hours. They might buy Call of Duty for $70, but they play the game for 2 hours and never touch it again. Are those people going to switch over? No. Was that considered in the 20%? The FTC couldn't answer her.
Yeah.
But those are numbers. That's what I'm getting at. Those are numbers. The console market is established. Like, it's very easy to do analytics on the console market. When you're talking about the cloud, a nascent market that nobody knows, that's where the FTC should have focused all their weight on, because you could create reasonable doubt because there's no definitive answer. So that was an easier case to present, but they spread themselves out over these different places, and, you know, even focusing on trying to get, you know, the Nintendo Switch removed from the market, trying to ignore PC players. All this kind of stuff took away from the resources, I think. And again, that was the original point of Hogue. I'll go back to Hogue because when he was still doing videos, you know, that was one of the points that he was making was, listen, if there's a weak spot, it's the cloud. The FTC should focus on that. He said, I still don't think it's a strong argument, but nonetheless, it's your best avenue to try to get this deal blocked. They didn't do that. And I think Judge Corley saw that in play here. And I don't think that they had enough time or spent enough effort on the cloud side of things to fully convince her that this is something that they absolutely need to look at, and not only look at, but put a preliminary injunction, because 20 years down the road, cloud might be the biggest deal in gaming, and Microsoft, just because of this one acquisition, might have full control over that market and be screwing over customers. Did they do that? I don't think they did. I don't think they convinced her from that fact. But like you said, man, she is a human being. And at the end of the day, she's going to make a ruling. And she, you know, while she had a good baseline of knowledge from her previous experience with the gamers lawsuit, she still didn't understand the industry. None of these people really did.
Right.
And so it's, who knows what she thinks.
And at the end of the day, all she has to decide is if there's reasonable questions to be asked.
If the FTC could present a case, a winnable case down the road, can the FTC win a case? Is this a winnable case that she needs to put a preliminary injunction right now to keep Microsoft from closing over the top of the FTC and ultimately the CMA? CMA started trying to pull some nonsense today too, Mav. Did you see that?
Yeah, they tried to get a delay.
Delay till October. They wanted to delay the proceedings after Cat agreed that they needed to have quick proceedings. They came back without any reasoning. The Cat even said that in their review, and tried to delay this till October. If you're telling me there's no collusion between these two regulatory bodies, I'm going to call you a liar, because there is collusion going on between these two in some form or fashion. They are working in conjunction with each other. There's no way this nonsense is happening. But thank God, Cat slapped that down and said, no. This is completely unreasonable. You guys have no reason to be putting this forward. We're not going to do this. You understood that we wanted to get this done quickly, and this is not happening. We're not giving you till October. We're going to go on. We're going to proceed as we ordered before, which was great to see, by the way. That means Cat is listening to this. Yeah,
for sure. We got a $5 super chat from Stay High FFF.
Stay High FFF. Thank you, sir.
Says, breaking news. I just spoke to all the publishers personally, and they said Jim lied. They never spoke to him, and they love Game Pass.
You have as much credibility as Jim, by the way.
Yeah.
So, take that for what it is. But that was another great Jim quote that came out of this.
That all publishers hate Game Pass.
And then a bunch of publishers came out on Twitter and said, we're for no other reason, but we're going to just say that we love Game Pass.
Right. Also a member for 24 months.
Ooh. Ooh, thank you.
3-bit.
3-bit, the one and
Says,
only.
Longest running member on here. Let's go. Might be. Yeah, you
Is
and
that
I
a
think
flex,
Back from
3-bit?
Dead might be like
Is that a
right
flex?
there.
3-bit's trying to prove.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I don't know, man.
You guys had a great conversation last night, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Nick's is killing it in chat. I see you guys talking, and Nick's is pointing out great casting ideas if there was a movie about this.
There should be a movie about this when it's all said.
Yeah, there should be.
Agree.
Like, it would be great. He said Henry Cavill as Phil Spencer.
Okay. I think Phil would probably agree with that.
Yeah. Let's see. He says Kojima plays himself in the movie.
Okay.
Said, imagine
Why is
Keeley
Kojima
sending Jim to Japan. Jeff calls his significant other Kojima to protect Ryan in Japan and keep him safe while the case is happening. Oh, it's because Jim's been in Japan.
Yeah, Japan. Yeah. Instead of being there. Yeah.
He says
that would be a small scene. It'd be hilarious.
Rosario Dawson is Sarah Bond.
Very good.
Yeah.
That would work. I like
there's
Rosario.
more. Let's see. Jonah Hill as Bobby Kotick.
Wow. Yes, Jonah can play sleazeball. Let's go. All right.
Yeah. Like it.
I like it. Put that script together, Nix.
Yeah, I still want to know who's going to play Jim Ryan.
Hollywood might love it. Let's go. Mav, we should talk about Jim Ryan here real quick, because one of the more interesting things that came out in all the documents prior to them getting pulled was we found out why Jim thought that the deals Phil was offering were unacceptable on many levels, right?
Oh, because he tried to add other stuff to the deal.
Bro.
Oh, I want all those ZeniMax Bethesda games also, Jim said.
Let me quick run through this real quick. Phil, this is Jim's email on May 26th, day for my birthday, on 2022 at 9:55 a.m. in the morning. So this was after Phil made a proposal to him, told him that they're going to, continue to put Call of Duty on there, all that good stuff. So Jim writes this: Phil, thank you for your email. We agree that ensuring Activision Blizzard games are available on PlayStation is the right thing to do for gamers in the industry. However, Microsoft's original proposal did not fill this objective and left us with serious concerns that our counter proposal is designed to address. Far from being unusual, our counter proposal represents the minimum needed to respect gamers' interests and maintain competition. You guys want to keep you in mind during this whole email here. First of all, I think King made a great point on Boone Show this morning, saying that this was probably written by attorneys at this point, that the email changed from his other emails to a much formal one because they were actually proposing things, and that a Sony attorney probably wrote parts of it and looked it over for sure. But also think about the position that Jim has been in this industry with Sony for a very long time now, and the power that he has wielded and that PlayStation wields in general. That's the position this email comes from. He's not speaking to Phil, or PlayStation is not speaking to Xbox during this email as an equal. They are positioning themselves as somebody, you need us more than we need you, which they've done throughout the industry using bullying tactics and stuff like that to get deals done, all that kind of stuff. We know how it goes. So that's the tone that this email sets, at least in my opinion. That's how I read this. He goes on to say, we believe there are two fundamental principles that are critical to mitigating the potential negative impact to gamers from the Activision acquisition. Yeah, sure, Jim, you care about your gamers, right? The first principle is that the commitment to availability of Call of Duty and other Activision games on PlayStation must be sufficiently broad to fully align with gamer expectations. To do the right thing for gamers, oh my God, this is just sickening sometimes when I read this shit. He doesn't believe any of this. It is not enough to represent that a particular selection of older titles will remain on PlayStation. Rather, it is essential to agree that all Activision titles will be made available on PlayStation, irrespective of their original release dates or whether they can be classified as part of a particular franchise, just as they have been historically. And this commitment needs to be a lengthy one, not just a few years after the acquisition. He goes on to say, the second principle is that in addition to addressing the scope of the content available on PlayStation, the parties' agreement must address in the manner in which the games will be made available. If Activision games are made available only on terms that are disadvantageous for PlayStation in comparison with other platforms, this could be tantamount to not making them available on PlayStation at all. As one example, making Activision games available on PlayStation after those games have been made available on Xbox would be contrary to the spirit of Microsoft's commitment to keep Activision games on PlayStation, as well as being unsatisfactory for gamers. With these principles in mind, let me briefly address the contours of our counter proposal. The first term of our proposal is designed to advance the first principle stated above, satisfying the gamer's expectations by ensuring that all Activision games are available on PlayStation. Please note that the reference to the price parity relates specifically to the wholesale price on which PlayStation is offered Activision titles for resale on the PlayStation Store. The second term of our proposal is designed to advance the second principle described above. Unequal treatment of Activision games in subscription services would lead to unequal availability of the games.
That's like saying don't put it on Game Pass.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. That's exactly what he's getting at. As long as you agree to the fundamental principle, Activision games should not receive unequal treatment on the party's subscription services. We are open to further discussing the details on how this might be accomplished. Thanks, Jim. The third term of our proposal simply recognizes the reality that upon completion of the acquisition of Activision, it would not seem to make logical sense for the financial, marketing, and other arrangements previously negotiated between SIE and Activision to continue to apply in the post-acquisition world. We believe this common sense step is to the benefit of both Microsoft and SIE. Regarding Bethesda, this is big balls. This is why I said this is whole emails from a position of power. He's not talking to Phil as an equal here. Regarding Bethesda, I was making a more general point during our discussion that the equal treatment of Bethesda games would be a logical subject for the parties to discuss because it involves some of the same concerns as the availability and or unequal treatment of Activision games. We would welcome discussing this subject as part of an agreement that advances the two fundamental principles discussed above. We would appreciate you confirming that these terms are acceptable as a framework for the parties to negotiate an appropriate written agreement. If you can confirm this, I will instruct my team to get started immediately on preparing an agreement that can be finalized following negotiations with your team. Please let me know if you have any further questions. Regards, Jim. The audacity, Mav. The audacity to not only say, look, you're paying $70 billion for Activision Blizzard. That's cool. But if you really want to make this fair, as you say it, yeah, you're not going to be putting that on Game Pass day and date unless we get it over on PlayStation day and date as well. You're not going to be doing that with, I know you own it, but come on. You're not going to do that. And then to turn around and say, oh, yeah, that Bethesda purchase you made. Oh, yeah, that $70 billion or that $7 billion one that went through. And nobody had a problem with it. And they granted you that there was no remedies, no nothing. No. I want to renegotiate that. And I know you spent $7 billion and you now own Bethesda and all the ZeniMax studios, but those games also need to come over. Otherwise, we don't have any type of deal to be worked out here. I want those games as well underneath the same terms as the Activision Blizzard games, which again means no Game Pass day and date, which means, oh, by the way, you better get to work on Starfield and not launch that thing early because we're going to have a problem with that because that's unfair. Mav, Jim Ryan just never ceases to amaze. And again, like I said, King made a good point. A lot of this was probably written by attorneys, looked over, whatever the case may be, but it doesn't matter. He put his name to it. It's his. It always catches me off guard. The dude that Jim is, again, he's a businessman. I respect him. He's using his position of power. He's using his marketing leadership to do things that other companies would not get away with, that Xbox simply cannot do because their position. He's done it. That's his job. But to simply think that you're going to write Phil and say, yeah, we want all your games that you just paid almost $80 billion for between ZeniMax and Activision Blizzard. We want all those games equal across the board over on our side, and we think that's fair. Come on, man. What do you think?
I think Phil needs to reply 2 years later, or a year and a half later, whatever, and say, "Hey, Jim, I'm finally getting back to your email. It's taken me a while, but I will consider your offer. But I have another proposal. Final Fantasy 16, Silent Hill 2, Knights of the Old Republic,
God of War, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Throw that in there too. Those games should be also on Xbox. And if you are willing to talk about that and parity and pricing and all that shit, we will. I'll instruct my team to come to the table and start negotiating." Signed, your daddy. Here's the thing, like Jim Ryan is, like you said, he's playing from a position of power there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as he said, they don't even really need Call of Duty, right? And he doesn't even believe that Xbox was going to pull it off of PlayStation anyway. This is all just a plan that, knowing that Microsoft was going to try and appease regulators and all that kind of stuff to try and get more out of it, right? Try and get as much from PlayStation as he can, with knowing that Microsoft is going to have this fight with the FTC. And I think it's been a whole play with PlayStation using the FTC and all this kind of stuff to strengthen their position with potential, like, getting more Microsoft games and all that kind of stuff this whole time, right? Like, I think that ultimately their stance for Call of Duty has not been a place of concern, right? It's been a fake concern, much as like has permeated throughout some of the community as well, out there. A lot of fake concern out there, or misled concern at that point at the hands of PlayStation, right? The lengths that they will go is crazy, right? The pompousness in the email, and reading some of what he said on the stand and stuff is also arrogant as fuck to actually claim that all publishers hate Game Pass. Like on a, like, under oath. Like, right. I mean, stating that, like, you don't speak for everybody, bro.
Correct.
You don't speak for the industry. Like, you want to think that you're in a position of power, that's fine. Yeah, y'all have a dominant market position at PlayStation, and y'all make some great games, right? And all that kind of stuff. But, like, you don't got to be such a dick. Like, I'm just like, you gotta stop. It's just ruthless business stuff, I guess. You know what I mean? But, like, it's just, I don't know. It just speaks to the difference between the executive leadership between Sony and Microsoft. And yeah, right. PlayStation's been way more cutthroat. They always have been. And at times we say Xbox needs to be as well. But here we are. We've seen behind the scenes now. We've seen that Microsoft is behind the scenes a little bit more cutthroat than a lot of us had assumed.
Matt Booty's a totally different dude.
Oh, yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
He's a stone cold killer behind the scenes. Matt Booty ain't playing.
Yeah, so Matt Booty was like, if he ever takes over Xbox, like, everything's exclusive, fuck the rest of the industry, Microsoft's it, they'll be acquiring everything and just make it on consoles only.
And we also learned today too that Phil's been doing double speak, Mav. Yeah. I mean, I will say this. Phil has continuously said that it's going to be a case-by-case basis, but we got the internal docs today that he made a decision November 2021 that all ZeniMax games will be exclusive. So ever since November 2021, every time he said, well, it's still a case-by-case basis, he's been doing the CEO double speak. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's been playing that game publicly facing, whereas behind the scenes, he was ruthless too. He said, no, everything. Because there was a real quick, I'll read this real quick. During CFO's Tim Stewart time in the witness stand, the FTC called to attention a chat conversation from November 2021 between Stewart and Xbox's Matt Booty. The two are messaging about a recent monthly business review meeting between Xbox and ZeniMax, where Spencer apparently made the call to make all ZeniMax games exclusive going forward, not just new IP. Stewart was asking Booty about what happened during the meeting. Quote, all games going forward, Stewart asked, not just new IP, but all games going forward. Wow. Booty confirmed this during the chat conversation, writing, Phil told them all titles going forward will be Xbox exclusive. And that was per IGN in their article today. So yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
The next Doom. Yeah. I mean, like, think about it. You really start putting that in perspective. You know what I mean? About what that means, right? Elder Scrolls 6, right? Then they said on stand that they hadn't made a decision. But like, if that's the case, basically, if they stand behind that, I will say that, they tend to change their minds a lot at Xbox about different things, right?
Sure.
So
absolutely.
Who knows? And that was before this acquisition, I believe, or was that after?
November 2021.
So that was before.
Before, correct. Right.
So I still say that post ABK could be a different Xbox slightly. Not majorly, but in some ways.
Yeah.
Because of the acquisition than before, right? Mm-hmm. Like a game like Elder Scrolls 6 may have been.
Elder Scrolls 16 may have.
Elder Scrolls, yeah, you're right. I'm still,
I wish we had just saying Elder Scrolls games. My God.
It's probably going to be exclusive. I just wouldn't go 100% all in on that. You know what I mean? But
at this point, I think actually, yes.
Probably so.
Yes, after what Sony's pulled and shit, I don't think there's ever going back. So I think Phil will stand on that one. Be like that.
Fuck you moment.
Fuck you. Right. Final Fantasy 16 isn't on our platform. Fuck you.
Yeah.
You don't get Elder Scrolls. It's fair trade. Fuck off.
Oh, especially if ABK doesn't happen.
Right. Oh, then
like
we're
on a whole nother if platform. ABK happens, I think there's a world of possibilities of things that could happen in the future. But like, if ABK doesn't close, all that shit's exclusive. You know what I mean? And then
100%.
And the next publisher they buy, all that shit's exclusive too, because it won't be as big of a one as ABK.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it's gonna be interesting, man. Like, what's gonna happen? But Jim Ryan is he's been hard to listen to for a long time.
Still is.
It's hard to read his comments and stuff for a long time. And I seeing that email is it's just strange. Now I get it's business. It's business. You know what I mean?
All of this is business. Both on Xbox's side and PlayStation. It's all business.
It shows they had no interest of being cordial business partners with Microsoft.
Correct.
It was like, that's pure competition. Fuck you type email. Right.
Correct. Yep.
And if you're Sony at that, you saw them get ZeniMax, now they got Activision, right? So they're probably like, well, we're gonna try and say F you to stop buying these publishers, right? So maybe that's what it's all about. But I think they passed up an opportunity, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, I will say this also: if the judge does end up granting this preliminary injunction, at the end of the day, based on how this went the last several days and what happened in the closing arguments, it won't be because of PlayStation's argument. It'll be because of the cloud.
Correct. That's the one thing, but is it enough, right? Is it enough? Yeah. Did they set themselves up for failure by spreading themselves too thin? That's what we're going to find out. I see a lot of people, trying to say that they don't believe in the system, the court system. It's not gonna play out how we think it's gonna play out. The judge is gonna give a preliminary injunction, blah blah blah. Like I said, if I had to put money on it right now, I'm saying it. She's not going to grant it. I don't think she's got enough. Again, federal judges, as much as you may not want to believe in the system for a variety of different reasons, when it comes to M&A, when it comes to this type of acquisition, and again, this is a very, very unique acquisition, but federal judges don't want to be the one to set precedent. They really don't, because it can have ripple effects down the road, and the judges don't want to be the one whose case, if it's not blatant, if it's not a situation where it's actually crystal clear at the end of the day, and that their ruling is all but determined for them because of the facts laid out, if there's questions about it, federal judges don't want to go against the law. They don't want to set that precedent so that their name is synonymous with ripple effects that they never saw coming down the road. Again, this industry is so dynamic, and I think that's the one thing the judge probably has learned throughout this. This industry is so dynamic and so ever changing that there's no way to predict outcomes with a crystal ball, even though that's what you're trying to do here.
Yeah.
We don't even know if Call of Duty will still exist in 10 years from now. Call of Duty could be just a footnote in 10 years. Another game could come along and blow it out of the water.
Oh, X Defiant, man. It's going to be X.
Somebody said in the chat, X Defiant could be the next big thing. We don't know, man. That's what happens in this industry. People might be done. Look at how many less people play regular Call of Duty multiplayer than they play Warzone. Warzone's now the big one, right? Yes, a lot of people still play Call of Duty, don't get me wrong. But compared back in the day before Warzone, before Battle Royales came around, it was a lot higher in the regular multiplayer sphere, right? They're regular multiplayer. So that changes. And that happens all the time in this industry. And Call of Duty literally could go the way of the dodo bird. We could wake up one year and all of a sudden they could be like, Call of Duty franchise has been retired, right? It's been mothballed. That can happen. And that's the crazy part about this industry that everybody kind of forgets, is like, you're trying to say that Call of Duty is going to be the dominant player for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and that it's going to determine the cloud market down the road. No, it could be some unknown game like a Fortnite to come along and blow up that dominates the cloud market space whenever that becomes viable. And it could not be owned by Microsoft. It could be a small developer. It could be an Angry Birds. Who the hell freaking knows, right? Nobody does. And that's what's crazy about this. It's not like the oil and gas industry. It's not like the cell phone industry where everybody is kind of doing the same thing and you're all kind of competing in the same space. Sure, you're competing in the games industry, but you're coming at it from all different angles with different genres and different new games, and small publishers are popping up all over the place. Nobody heard of Embracer Group 5 years ago. And look at what they become. I know they're having massive problems, but look at how big they grew over a period of 2 to 3 years. Embracer Group became a powerhouse that everybody was taking notice of. There's not too many industries that happens in outside of video games. So it's just a different beast, man. And I hope that that's what the judge kind of heard throughout this, is like, there's a lot of different moving parts and a lot of unknowns that nobody can predict in this industry. Nobody, even the best analysts can't predict it. And I think that might sway her. I think that she might look at that, because you don't want to mess with an industry that is dynamic and that is growing.
And she said it's amorphous also.
Yes. She did.
She said it's always changing. And she also did make a point that she thinks consoles will go away, probably like everything else did.
Sure.
She said you don't watch DVDs anymore. You watch Netflix and stuff. Like,
correct.
We've talked about numerous times. And I think she's eventually right. But I think it's really early in that. And then still, you have to make the argument that Call of Duty and Activision content is so important to that industry that it's going to keep others from being successful. Right. Which that was the whole point of Stadia being there as well, but they didn't have Activision Blizzard content anyway. So a pointless argument, really. It's not like it was there and pooled and all of a sudden Stadia failed because we don't have it anymore. It was, they tried to make the argument that didn't have any content. Well, it's who is that on? That you got to invest in the market and the ecosystem and stuff to get that stuff. And it was Activision Blizzard's independent decision not to put the games there. Right. So again, what's more likely, ABK games and Microsoft games to be on those other services because of this acquisition or without? And it's hard to put a theory of harm for me on the cloud at competitors, right?
Right. Yep.
In that case,
Yep.
So
yeah. And Psycho said it too. Halo was the dominant shooter for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Yep, it was.
And now Halo is like a joke
right.
to some people. I love it, but like people make fun of it all the time. And
right.
stuff.
It just happens, man. You got no control over it sometimes. And sometimes you make bad mistakes and bad decisions in this industry, and it costs you your entire franchise. Rayoid says Hayes is making a comeback and going to take over COD. How about Bethesda? Ray, Bethesda could bring back Brink. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
Give Brink another run, and all of a sudden it's the dominant shooter. Wouldn't that be freaking crazy, right?
Oh, yeah.
I like Brink, by the way. And I liked Hayes, too. They both had their moments.
Brink was good. Was fun.
Yeah. The parkour aspect.
I never played Hayes.
Cool as hell back then. You never played Hayes?
No.
Oh, Hayes really had some really good moments.
I didn't like... I had a PS3 and I played games on it, but like I didn't dabble into a lot of the exclusives on PS3 back then. I thought a lot of them were shit. And then like, I might have actually played like a few minutes of Hayes if there was like a demo or something. Yeah.
There was always demos back then.
Yeah. But besides that, like, I don't know. Like I thought Resistance was crappy. I didn't like it. Not Resistance, sorry. Killzone. Yeah.
I liked Killzone. I thought Killzone was fun.
Yeah, I didn't like Killzone. I tried it. I just thought it was sluggish and slow.
It was compared to Halo. Yeah. Fuck yeah. I mean, if you're a Halo player and you try to play Killzone, no.
Yeah,
I wasn't a Halo player, Killzone.
I played it for like 5 minutes of fuck this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wasn't a big Ratchet guy or any of that stuff. I liked Uncharted.
Yep. I loved Uncharted, Last of Us, and again, a lot of the Japanese games from Japan studios.
Yeah, I played JRPGs and baseball and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Stuff. Yep.
But
yeah, Caesar, you are correct. That's what I was just saying. You are also harming the market with the judgment. Correct. That's the thing you don't want to mess up in a dynamic industry, right? That's the fear that you should have in any ruling is, am I screwing with something on a dystopian future that somebody sold me that is never going to happen? And am I messing with the industry as a whole that right now has taken care of itself without regulation and has worked through, problems, has almost killed itself off, come back, and is now stronger than ever to become the number one entertainment industry in the world? Do I want to mess with that dynamic that is happening right now, even if we are talking about consolidation? Consolidation, again, there are people out here who will try to argue with you that consolidation is bad overall for the consumer. I disagree wholeheartedly that there is consolidation, that when an industry is healthy, consolidation is a good thing. And I do think that it opens up spots for new companies to come in. And I think that, again, it's easy to argue it. I can hear you can take any situation and argue a dystopian future. You can take any situation and argue for the best case scenario where everything is kumbaya and it's paradise. It always generally falls somewhere in the middle. And so I think that anybody who argues 100% against consolidation is always bad for the consumer. And I hear cell phones always brought up. I'm sorry, when we had a bunch of little mom and pop cell phone companies popping up all over the country, were they giving us cell phone coverage like the big boys were? No. And so when consolidation happened in the cell phone companies, what did we see? We see unlimited plans become the normal. Before the consolidation, there was still a lot of places charging you for data all the time. And again, I was a part of the cell phone industry during this time. So
and minutes.
I don't understand. And minutes. We got unlimited data plans. We got better coverage from everybody because everybody was competing to have their coverage map look like the best. Whereas before, when it was all fractured, the customers that went with the smaller companies were not getting any type of service compared to the big boys. And that's an actual fact. Again, I was a part of that. So the people always, when they make these arguments, they always forget it. Sure. Can you say that the prices went up? Of course. Yes. The prices of plans went up as the coverage got better, as the bigger companies took over. For sure. They controlled more of the price points. And so, yes, we got bigger bills at the end of the day, But overall, my experience as a customer with a cell phone company is much better than it ever was when it was all fractured across the country. Much, much better. So there's always arguments to be on both sides. I just think that it is disingenuous to always say that every consolidation is generally bad for the consumer. I don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form. Sorry, I went off kind of rant there.
No, but good thoughts for sure. Man, what do you think's gonna happen? Prediction, Pong. Will the judge grant the preliminary injunction, or do you think she will not?
No, she won't grant the preliminary injunction. I don't think they did enough to show it. She won't grant the preliminary injunction. I think it's going to be a pretty stern slapdown of the FTC's case. I think that she will make multiple, because she could slap it down based upon one, right? She doesn't even have to rule on everything. She can just say there's no console. There's nothing here that's going to affect the console market. That was one of the FTC's major argument points. She can just say, I'm not granting an injunction. Now, if she does it that way, and again, this is not my opinion. I've been actually listening to people and reading people who know about this stuff. If she were to do that and just say, nope, you didn't prove to me the console market that there's going to be a harm of competition, even with foreclosure in the console market space. So I'm not granting your preliminary injunction. If she just does that, she can do that. But what that does is open up for appeal, right? The appeal then would be much easier for the FTC to be granted. So people are thinking that she is going to do a lengthy order on this one, and she is going to go through each of the FTC's arguments and slap them down, or she will have a impartial decision where she isn't sure, right, one way or the other about it. And that's why she does believe, and she said, that's why I was reading Foss Patton's thing to you guys earlier. Foss even said that she is aware that the potential for appeal is high in this. But they believe that she's going to try to cover all the bases so that the FTC's appeal is going to be much harder and much more limited in scope than if she leaves it wide open and open-ended. So I think that she is not going to grant this preliminary injunction. How about you, Matt? I know
got no damn clue. I mean, my gut tells me that she will not, allow it. I think that she won't allow the preliminary injunction, but there's just like a part of the back of my brain that just has doubt about that, just because it seems like such a easy thing for her just to say, I have questions about this still. Right.
Correct.
And if that is the case, I don't know what happens. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't know this stuff. You know what I mean? Like these cases, if I were to judge it based on what I've heard and seen, I would say absolutely no way. Right. But I know that a lot of times I've seen these things like in the past, or like, and you think something because it seems so strong. And then like when findings or whatever come out, it's like, oh, that seems like different than everything
the human element, man.
Right. Exactly.
And all the documents and testimony we didn't get to hear. Maybe there are smoking guns in there, right? Maybe there is something that she reads or sees from some of the internal documents that we didn't get access to, where she goes, oh, well, actually, I am believing the FTC now, right? She could certainly be doing that as well. We don't know.
I would say probably right now I would be like at a 65-35.
Sure. Fair enough.
That she won't allow the preliminary injunction. Right?
Hogue said he was slightly under 50-50 yesterday, meaning that he thinks that it's not going to be blocked, but it's still, it's close to 50-50, but it's under 50-50 that the FTC gets the injunction.
Right.
So, yep.
Yeah. And he would have a good feeling based on his, he's been in the situation.
Yeah.
And stuff. Like,
it's
just tough to say, man. All she has to do is pick on one thing. And, so like if I tell you what, if it was me, I know what I would do. I would hold Jim Ryan in contempt of court. I would hold him there. I'd be like, damn it, Jim. Did you just lie
throw him in a cell. Throw him in a cell.
Did you just lie under oath, Jim Ryan? You're in contempt. I would tell him to throw away the key, lock him up, and throw away the key. You know, that's it. No more.
It's your bot coming out, Mav.
Yeah,
watch
no,
it. Careful.
I don't care. Jim seems like a piece of shit to me now. So
he's a businessman through and through. He's a numbers guy through and through, and he lies and he does the double speak.
I get it.
It sucks.
I know. It's just like
he's not personable. He's not. Compared to Phil, it's a million miles apart in the type of personality that.
See, if Phil's lying to me or double speaking or whatever, then it's like, you know, you're doing your job, right?
And you still know you'd sit down and game with him.
Yeah,
right?
And I would still like to hang out, have a beer, play some video games. If Jim's doing it,
yeah, there's nothing to like about him.
Yeah, and I don't feel this way about other Sony execs either. This is not just a Sony thing. It's like a Jim thing. Guys,
yeah, Herman Hull seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I for sure, right? Like, it's just something about Jim, you know? It seems like a sleazy old man, jerkwad.
He's a boomer that doesn't play games.
It seems like you would have like a get together at your house. You'd have a party at your house, right? Yeah, and somebody brings Jim, right?
Right.
And Jim is just sitting in a chair, separated from everybody else in your house, getting together.
Yep.
And he's just has a pissed off look on his face, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he comes up to you and just says something snarky and goes back and sits in his chair for the rest of the time. Jim seems like that kind of guy. Yeah. Maybe he's not. I don't know.
He seems like a grumbling old man most of the time that just kind of sits in the dark by himself,
sitting there plotting ways he can fuck people over,
counting numbers. Scrooge McDuck like sometimes, right? So that definitely is it.
Yeah, he would like make comments on your like decorations in your house.
Oh yeah,
probably like that's an interesting picture. I wouldn't have chosen that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thanks.
Where'd you get that picture? Is it from Dollar Mart?
Yeah. My pictures in my house are way more expensive.
I shop at the museums. Yeah, I see where you're coming. That is
He's just got this like
it's got an air about him that just doesn't always jive.
He smells like Draca Noir everywhere he walks, you know.
Johnny Wildbun says, "Don't make me feel sorry for Jim because that's sad." LOL.
Yeah. Jim's gonna turn into the old man from Up.
Yeah. Yep. AJH says Jim is the dude that brings himself a single bottle of beer and drinks it slowly in the corner.
Yeah. He doesn't talk to anybody.
Right.
He just gets up every once in a while.
Nobody talks to him.
He just gets up every once in a while, walks to the island in the kitchen, grabs a handful of pretzels and some nuts, and goes back and sits in his chair and eats them in silence while he ponders the next way to fuck somebody over.
And he stares at everybody in judgment.
Yeah.
Right? He's judging everybody throughout the entire
with this look on his face.
Oh God. Oh, man, you got another. I don't know when you want to get out of here, brother, but we got so much we could dive into. But another interesting document came out where it was originally thought that Sony had redacted it with marker, but then it came out later. And shout out to Tom Warner, The Verge. He corrected his article stating that they actually found out that this was the courts who redacted information concerning Horizon Forbidden West and The Last of Us Part 2 that Sony did not want public. They redacted it with a marker and scanned it. Again, we could talk about the ineptness of the FTC at all times, but again, another part of the government, federal court. Somebody actually thought it was a good idea that this would work. So there's a paragraph, a part of the documents that discuss AAA development. And they give, for instance, development of Horizon Forbidden West, a 2022 SIE first-party release, lasted a total of redacted years, but you can read that, and it says 5 years, starting in 2017 and ending in 2022. The game cost, redacted, $212 million. You could read it. $212 million to develop and a peak headcount of over 300 full-time employees. It's either a 300 or 200 full-time. I'm going with the 3 by the looks of it. And I think most people's articles are 300 full-time employees. Development on The Last of Us Part 2, a 2020 SIE first-party release, took longer than redacted months. Well, it turns out that redaction was 70 months, starting in 20, what is it? 2013 or 2014? I
think it was 14.
2013 or 2014, and ending in 2020. Development costs were around $220 million, even though that was redacted in black marker. $220 million, and headcount peaked around 200 full-time employees. In addition to development costs, global marketing costs for AAA games are large, even for established franchises. Mav, shocking numbers. Well, we knew AAA development was expensive. We're assuming this is without marketing, right? This is just development costs. You're talking about $200+ million per first-party AAA game. And you wonder why Sony has decided they need to start getting some games as a service going to get some revenue coming in. Sure, we know for sure The Last of Us Part 2 definitely made money. We know that Horizon Forbidden West probably made a little bit of money. But when you count in marketing costs on this stuff, and Sony doesn't skimp on the marketing costs. We know movies now, Mav. Again, movies are not secretive. We know everything about the movie industry, and you are a movie buff currently. I used to be, but you more so nowadays watch, the cost of Marvel movies explode. Obviously, Avatar, we know the figures, but nowadays it's almost one for one, dollar-wise. The amount that it costs to make a movie, they put into marketing, right? It's almost one for one. So if a movie costs $500 million to make, you can almost assume that they spent a total of $1 billion with marketing involved. Got to assume that with the AAA gaming market, it might not quite be one for one yet, but it's got to be up there, right, Mav? So we got to assume we're talking about $300-400 million costs for games, brother. That's a whole lot of money on AAA games, man, especially single player games that have no, any type of microtransactions or multiplayer or anything. Single player games. Ooh, boy, what'd you think when you heard these numbers?
Yeah, it's pretty astronomical for that game too.
Right. Right.
Not to try and downplay it, you know what I mean? But I would think that would be more like God of War Ragnarok or Spider-Man or something like that. Horizon is just not as popular, right?
Correct.
So the fact that they got greenlit that kind of budget is pretty crazy,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That cost was just development cost too, for sure, right? Like that's
what they stated as development costs without marketing or any of the other.
Yeah, so I mean that's like, if with marketing and all that stuff, if it got into the 350 million range or whatever.
Yep.
It's just crazy, for a game also that has no like legs with add-on and monetization, all that kind of stuff. Man, and
here's risk.
How many copies you got to sell to really make it worthwhile, right? So like it's a Sony game, so it's $70. They're making $70, right?
Yep.
It's in their storefront. There's credit card processing fees and stuff like that. Probably that
packaging
they got to pay
fees for the the
physical copies and stuff. So it does say they're making like $65 or whatever.
Got to give the stores their cut too, and whoever's selling it.
If they're selling that, I'm thinking of digital mainly, but like
digital from their store.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about like retail, then it's probably closer to like $50. I would assume maybe something like that. I don't know.
Somewhere in there.
I don't know how much retailers get. Maybe 30% also. Guess that's just a guess. I have no fucking clue.
Generally speaking, I think it is 70.
Maybe they make $50 roughly on physical minus.
Anyway. It just say $50. Just give
they make more on digital games than they do on fucking physical. Let's just say that, right? So anyway, so if you're saying maybe they make like an average of $60 or whatever. How many do they have to sell to get to
between 5 and 6 million, right?
add so 300. Let's estimate 320 million. So they had a marketing budget of 100 mil.
Yep.
So 320 million.
Yep. So right around five and a half million.
Yeah,
$5.5 million. If you're saying $60, $5.5 million copies.
Yeah. 5.333. Yeah.
Yep.
That's what you need just to break even, right?
Correct.
How many did it sell?
What, the Horizon passed, 8 million? I think it was their first report, right?
Those seem worth it, right? Even if they made 50 or if only $50 per copy,
yep.
It'd be worth it,
Yep.
So,
but it's the huge risk, right?
Yeah.
And that's assuming they're making $60 per copy, which overall average, don't even know if that's the case, right? And we're just guessing on marketing and all that kind of stuff.
I have no fucking clue.
Costs and all that kind of stuff. So you're talking about, you're talking about, sure, you're making money, right? But you're not making continuous money. And you're only making money when that sale goes through, because again, you don't have multiplayer, you don't have microtransactions. Sure, you did put out DLC for Horizon, which is going to get you some more money in there, but that costs money to make as well. On top of the fact that you're paying those devs the entire time that they're making the game, and then going forward into their next game, you're starting to pay them immediately. You're paying them. They're on the payroll, right? So it's continuous, and you don't have continuous streams of money coming in. That's the problem. That's where Microsoft excels more so than Sony.
Yeah.
Because they have games that are giving them the continuous stream along with Game Pass. Now, Sony does have PlayStation Plus now, and they're doing decently with that, and they're making money off of that. But that's why Sony's moving to games as service. That's why they're bringing back different genres, because they need that money, Math. They have to. That's because if you got one flop, that's a whole lot of money you lose.
Yeah.
Right.
I did it at, if it was $50.
Yep.
And it was like 6.4 mil they would have to sell to break even.
Right. Correct.
So even if they only made $50 on it, that's still positive for them, right?
So, it's still positive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy though. It is a risk. If you sell, what if one of those came out and you only sold 1 million?
Correct.
Right? That's a huge loss.
Huge loss, man.
That's a massive loss. So if you compound that, like, it's a risky business, man. It's interesting. Returnal,
and we don't,
I don't know how much that sold, right?
And we don't know what Sony's internals for ROI look like, right? We don't know what they expect a game to do, which is totally different from what we are just looking at. We're just looking at straight numbers, trying to figure out whether or not they made money. But just because they made money doesn't mean it made enough for Sony Corp, right? For the shareholder, it doesn't mean that that game went to meeting their projections, which is what their corporation is based upon. We always just look at it as a basic level, but that doesn't mean, again, you look at a game like Days Gone, right?
Yeah.
That budget probably was over 100 million, right? That budget was probably over 100 million. And they still said that game was a flop, even though eventually it sold 6 million, 7 million copies. Eventually it sold that. And then you got to factor in sales that happen, right? As well. You got to factor in the bundles, because you're, bundling it with a console that's losing you money out the gate, right? And you're bundling it in there in that price. So you got to figure all that in there too. So Sony internally still might not look at those numbers and be like, oh, they're great. Again, The Last of Us 2 for a while there, they were saying didn't sell quite as well as they expected, right?
And also, and I don't know exactly what you're referring to this with this. I saw a comment from C. Caesar that said huge offices. So something like you have to equate in my mind as, like with my business or whatever. I mean, there's a lot more cost involved than just the direct development cost involved.
Right.
Game about running a business, right? So like,
office
overhead.
Technology.
It's overhead, right?
Yep.
Every company has their overhead, right? So how much does it cost to exist and function as a business, right?
Right.
Inherently has to be tied into what you're charge to customers to be profitable, right?
Right.
So with all that said, like that's wrapped into all those decisions and stuff as well, like, and it's just crazy the amount of cost that's involved with the games individually. Think about all the other aspects tied into it, like,
correct.
And wonder what the actual margin is that they project they're making on a game, right? When it breaks even. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and I would love to know that. And unfortunately, that's not information we have.
Yeah.
You know, but
it's more information than we had previously.
Yeah.
Again,
sure.
That's why I love this shit. That's why I was so fascinated with this case from the beginning, man. We didn't just get a peek behind the curtain. We got the curtain ripped off. Like, again, for an industry this secretive, just one case like this has totally opened our eyes to so many things. Some things that we speculated on, right? Some things that we knew were going on that other people try to deny are now out in the open. We know it's real, right? But we got a deep dive on a lot of things that this industry probably never wanted consumers to know about, right? We've seen it live in action. We've seen it, heard it from people in testimony under oath about what goes on here. And it's pretty crazy to me, Mav. It's really crazy. Like, I love this.
Yeah.
This is good stuff.
Yeah. And Back makes a good point. So we could talk about costs, but they're reporting record profits while prices go up. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure,
of course.
You know?
Yeah. And we talk about that all the time. Yeah. 100%.
Scott Gamer Dude with $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Scott. Says, you guys ever use Microsoft Design Lab for Elite 2? If so, can you show off on cam sometime? I have not done for Elite 2. I have done Design Lab for
a regular controller.
For a regular controller.
Yep. We have done that.
And I don't have mine in here. But I have shown it on stream before. And actually
here's my regular one.
I actually have unboxing videos of me and my wife's last ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pong's got his Pong Soul one there.
Yep, I got my Pong Soul one.
The Design Lab ones have less options because the buttons and stuff are all like magnet metallic stuff, you know, on there. So
I've just never wanted to pay that much for a controller when it comes to an Elite controller.
Yeah, especially when you might get stick drift on it.
Right, exactly. With all the problems that people reported, maybe when the Elite 3 comes out, I will think about it. I've looked at scuff controllers, but at the end of the day, I've decided that I just can't again, as a budget game, I can't justify that price point for a controller. Like, I can't. Like, it's just not in me to spend that kind of money on a controller, no matter how good people say it is. And I know, like, people like Steel have been using Elites forever, and obviously competitive multiplayer games, I know it gives you an advantage. And the more multiplayer games I've played now, since I've met everybody here in the Fun Speculation family and stuff and played multiplayer with you guys, I've thought about it more than I ever would before. But at the same time, just can never pull the trigger. Just never have.
Hey, earlier you were one thing before we go, Pong.
Yeah.
You were gonna we talked a little bit about Annapurna.
Yeah. I got that list.
Do you have the list of the games that were announced
for
Game Pass?
Yeah, I do. Thanks to Windows Central, I do have that. And if you guys haven't seen the Blade Runner 2033 Labyrinth trailer, please go check that out from Annapurna. It looks like they're going to capture this atmosphere unbelievably well.
When is that game coming?
They did not give a release date on that.
2033.
2033. So let's take a look here. Windows Central broke down. Annapurna shows off 6 more games coming to Xbox Game Pass on Thursday. Annapurna Interactive, and who wrote this, by the way? I gotta give credit. Zachary Body. I hope it's Boddy or Body. It's Boddy. So I'm gonna go with Body. Zachary Body over at Windows Central. Shout out to the crew over there. On Thursday, Annapurna Interactive hosted its 2023 showcase for upcoming indie releases and updates. During the event, 6 games were featured that are coming to Xbox Game Pass on day one. This includes a release date for highly anticipated Cocoon, which looks amazing. I love the look of that game, which lands on Game Pass September 29th, 2023. It'll be sitting there waiting for me when I'm finally get off of Starfield. The last few weeks have been packed with constant Xbox Game Pass announcements. So here we go. Not every game featured during the Annapurna Interactive Showcase 2023 is coming to Xbox Game Pass at launch, but there's certainly more than most people probably expected going into the event. These are the 6. Cocoon, again, September 29th, 2023. Thirsty Suitors. Not interested. If you are, more power to you. Thirsty Suitors coming on November 2nd, 2023. Bounty Star. This one does look cool. It's like that steampunk Wild Wild West game, Mav. Looks
such
really,
a badass
really dope.
name. There needs to be a Netflix space cowboy show called Bounty Star.
Correct. Bounty Star, that is in 2024. No exact date. Ghost Bike. This was a new one that I was not aware of. Looks kind of cool. That is also coming in 2024. Flock, unknown release date, and To a T, unknown release date. So those are the ones that were announced for Game Pass day and date.
Bounty Star.
Bounty Star looks so dope, man. I can't wait.
Yeah, I just like saying the name.
I know you do. I know you do. It is a cool name. It is a very cool
It's a
name.
very cool name. It's a name that should have already existed in a show or
Somewhere.
movie or something. Bounty Star. It sounds like a 80s. Doesn't it sound like a 80s like sitcom or something that had like a
yeah, Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris in space, you know, like Bounty Star. Yeah, that'd have been badass, dude.
Yeah, Scott Gamer dude, go check out the trailer for that for the Blade Runner.
Or like a B action movie franchise, totally cool. You know, like
oh no, I don't disagree with you. Yeah. I think it sounds dope.
It's cool. It's the best name in gaming.
Now you're getting very far out there.
Next to Starfield. Right there was Bounty Star.
Bounty Star.
I can't believe it's not existed before.
It sounds like it sounds like a name that they would use as a kind of a, I guess I would say like a breakaway part of Cowboy Bebop. Like, because you said Cowboys in Space, right? They could do a whole separate franchise that's just called Bounty Star.
Yeah, I just imagine like a bounty hunter traveling in space, like an old anime or like a Voltron style, like 80s like cartoon or something in the back of the day.
Exactly. That sounds like Starfield DLC. It could be that as well. That'd be pretty dope.
Bounty Star.
I like that. Take that in Brave Star. I like that Caesar too.
Scott Gamer dude, welcome to Speculators.
Welcome to Speculators.
Joining the channel.
Absolutely awesome. Welcome. Mav, let's
can't
see
get
here.
over it. Bounty Star. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll let you continue.
You gotta go get a tattoo, man. Go get a tattoo.
If it's good. If the game's good.
It's good. I don't really have anything else. It was interesting. Satya's he was up there on the stand for like 10 minutes, but he made it quite clear where he stands on exclusives, Mav. This got people's attention too this week. Quote, if it was up to me, I would love to get rid of the entire exclusives on consoles, but that's not for me to define, especially as a low share player in the console market. The dominant player there, obviously going after Sony, has defined market competition using exclusives. So that's the world we live in. I have no love for that world. Saying it only the way Satya could.
Yeah.
Again, that last sentence, I have no love for
he wasn't up there very long, but he made his point clear.
Yeah, he did. He did. Yeah. Satya's was interesting just because they had him confirm a lot of internal communications that we couldn't hear or know what they said.
Yeah.
They just had him confirming those, that was him, right?
Yep.
That he said that. Yep.
That's me.
Yep. Yeah, every answer. Yep. I see it. Yep. I don't remember, but it's there.
Yep. That's right. Yep.
It was awesome. And also this morning was interesting that the FTC had declined to ask any questions of Amy Hood, CFO of Microsoft. That was interesting as well. Thought for sure they would have some questions.
Were they scared
or they didn't have anything, or she didn't have any internal communications that raised any flags, and she's CFO, right? So that was really curious to me because Microsoft attorneys released a preliminary kind of findings from Amy Hood last night, and then they asked her some questions this morning, but they got to the FTC on cross-exam, and they were like, after further considerations, we have no questions for this witness. I was like, damn, the CFO? You guys have been hitting financial stuff. Amy Hood must have been clean in her emails. Like, she must not put anything in writing. She must have been one of those people that just says nothing unless I'm to your face.
Even the no fake gotcha questions about the business model or anything like that. And she's the one that approves like a lot of acquisitions and stuff. Like,
she can approve deals under 500 million. She can do it herself.
Interesting that, it is interesting that they didn't have anything for her.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. Other than that, that's about it, man. We did get confirmed that Stray, all you cat lovers out there, up for Game of the Year somehow, some way, is coming to Xbox finally on August 10th. Not Game Pass, but it is launching August 10th as well. Again, I'm interested in playing that game. Honestly, I've been interested since I first saw it. I thought the atmosphere was
pretty
totally
cool.
It's
a good
you played
game.
it. You played it on PlayStation.
Like the cat physics are amazing. Controlling the cat and stuff, but like
Game of the Year,
man. Not in that category.
Come on. Yeah, what are you saying? All the media thought it was Game of the Year quality. Best cat game ever. No,
I don't agree with a lot of the media a lot of times. I'll just say that. It may be the best cat game ever.
Obviously, people thought it was.
Well,
That's why it was up for game of the year.
Blink's the cat, though.
Yeah, and we're getting more cat games this year as well. So, and next year as well too. So, cats are all the rage right now.
Yeah.
Dog lovers, we get to pet them in video.
Where's all the fucking dog games?
That's what I'm saying. We get to pet them in games every once in a while.
Yeah,
right?
they're like always just like a thing you can pet.
Right.
Why did Stray exist before we get to play as a dog?
Right.
This is actually, I'm a little pissed off right now as a dog guy. I had a cat and I loved my cat, you know, but like
dogs are.
The dogs are on another
I love
level.
both. I love them both.
Yeah,
but they're just two different relationships. Dog is unquestionable, man. Like
and a cat, you got to keep cleaning the damn litter box all the time.
And you got to question day to day whether or not that cat likes you. That's always interesting.
Yeah,
like you always question, like if it doesn't sit on your lap and purr, and there's like 2 days where it's just off on its own, staring out a window, you got to wonder if it started hating you, right?
Yeah, we had this. We had this picture of my cat. Rest in peace.
Right.
We had this cat for 21 years, right? He was old. We had this picture of him, and it was like a close-up of his face. It was just like this part of his face, and like he looked so evil in it. It was just like crazy.
Yep.
He looked like an evil like villain in a movie. And for some reason, we never changed this, but like it got mislabeled on the computer. Mm-hmm. When we were like, somehow it got labeled barbecue meatballs.
Yeah.
So we had the barbecue. So we just always we noticed it was changed, like it was wrong, and we didn't know why it said barbecue meatballs. We mistyped or mislabeled it or something.
Oh my God.
But we just always knew it as the barbecue meatballs picture of Clifford the cat, and we made sure to never change it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I got it, and it's a hilarious fucking picture too. So at some point, I need Kate to send me the barbecue meatballs picture, and I'll share it on stream of our cat, and you guys would love it.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it, actually. I think that sounds amazing, but that's one of those things you do have to see.
It has nothing to do with barbecue meatballs,
right?
Other than the file name on the computer.
Oh, anyway. Good God! All right, should we get everybody out of here, Math? It's been 3.5 hours.
Yeah, let's get that.
Again,
I'm hungry.
We continue to break down stuff from this. There's so much here. So
yeah, been talking about barbecue meatballs. Need to eat some dinner.
Yeah, whenever you start talking food, I know it's time.
Yeah,
that's like my signal. Mav's hungry, and we better get him out of here. Wow, what a PM in the PM. What a fantastic show. Again, thank you all, chat, for joining us. It has been a hell of a month or so with Gamers Christmas and all this ABK stuff just kind of exploding. Like it's towards the end now. Like this could determine a lot. I still believe they'll stick it out. Even if they get the PI here, I don't believe it's the end of the deal. I just believe that we're going to be talking about this for probably potentially 1 to 2 more years if this PI goes through. That's all I think it means to me. I think Microsoft fights it all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary, which would even be longer. But that's just my opinion. I know some people do believe it's over with, but we're finally going to find out, and hopefully it's next week. And I think the Judge Corley, she has been absolutely phenomenal throughout this entire case. She has done an admirable job with a highly complex situation that is not normal, even in mergers and acquisitions. She's done a great job, and I think that she wants to wrap it up, though. And I think she understands the timeframes that are involved here, and I think she will have that decision next week. So we might be back
How
here
will
Thursday.
You feel about her if she grants the preliminary injunction?
It is fine. Again, she's the judge. Again, I don't agree with our justice system in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's a lot of flaws. There's a lot of problems. But when it comes to mergers and acquisitions and that kind of stuff, it's been pretty steady law. I would disagree with it, but I'm sure her
at least it was up to the judge, right?
Right. At least it was up to the judge. Microsoft got it where they wanted it to in the federal courts. So again, I would say that she found merit in the FTC case. I'm sure it'll be explained very well. Again, she's not one of these judges who's just going to, well, no, I just didn't agree. It's going to be well thought out. It's going to point to certain cases. She's going to have all her ducks in a row, whichever way this decision goes. Right. So I will abide by it, and I will sit here and wait for Microsoft's response and see where the deal goes. It just gets more interesting either way, Mav. Either way, for me, it gets more interesting. People are going to hate it if Microsoft fights it. And we're talking about this for another year to 2 years. It's not going to be everybody's favorite. But if they do drop the deal, they pay the $3 billion, they go out, well, then the ramifications on this industry are going to be far, far reaching. And then I want to see what Microsoft looks like if they don't get this deal and where they decide to go. Because then we could see a highly aggressive Microsoft, even more so than currently we're talking about. And we could see a Matt Booty in his internal emails from a couple of years ago come to fruition, where Microsoft goes, fine, FTC, you said it directly in court. What Sony does is not illegal. Fine. We'll still outspend them. Let's go. Yeah. And they start buying exclusivity. Again, we don't know if that's going to happen.
Booty unleashed. Let's go. That's what I want to see now. Unleash the booty.
Or a pissed off Satya. Again, his legacy at Microsoft is solid. It's solidified. It's set in stone. He's been there longer than most CEOs, but I've said that this is the final one because it's the biggest deal in Microsoft history, not just video game history, but Microsoft's history. So for his legacy, when he looks back, when he is retired and moved on to the better years of his life, when he sits back with that scotch in his hand and he's in his rocking chair thinking about all his years at Microsoft, is this going to be the one that he goes and, even though with all the accomplishments he's done at Microsoft, is this the one he sits back and thinks about with regret? I don't believe so. I think he fights this till the end, but maybe not. Maybe not, Mav. Maybe he does it in a different way. Maybe he goes, fine, you want to screw me out of this deal? I'll make my own legacy in a different way, playing by Sony's rules, and we'll see how Sony comes out at the end of the day. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting, Mav. Great conversation as always, brother. Huge from the chat. You guys were amazing tonight, as always. Again, just the turnout is incredible each and every Thursday. No matter what we're talking about, you guys are just special. We love the community here. Everything that has been happening with all the speculators, all the fun speculation that goes on here, you guys join in time and time again to hear us. And it's absolutely amazing to both me and Mav. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn there, that we have this many people that want to listen to us talk and that want to engage in the chat. And if you're just lurking, again, same love and respect to you. It doesn't matter. You're a part of it. Even if you just lurk through this or you listen to this in the future, don't care. It's all the same. So thank you all for joining us tonight on this episode of PM and the PM, episode 77. My lucky number is 7. I love 7s when I see them. Thank you all for joining us. Mav, we got Xbox Ultimate tomorrow night. We got all the other stuff going on. What do you got planned? You got anything big streaming coming up? You think you're going to do some Diablo? What's going on, brother?
Play some games this weekend. Probably going to finally do some more streams this weekend, hopefully. But you're right, Pong, tomorrow night is Xbox Ultimate. And we had a record turnout last week for Xbox Ultimate podcast. We got a lot to talk about tomorrow as well. We'll dive more into this stuff with the family, and I can't wait to get everybody's thoughts about what we just heard with these closing arguments and stuff. So looking forward to it. Appreciate you being here as always, bro. And where can everybody find you, sir?
Can't wait to hear Psychonauts' legal analysis is second to none tomorrow night. It's going to be amazing. Shout out to brother Psychonauts.
When he keeps talking about Lisa Khan.
Lisa Khan?
That's the evil twin sister of Lena Khan.
I just hope he doesn't try to do any more Satya impersonations.
Yeah.
Listen, great show, brother. Thank you for all you do behind the scenes. Shout out again to Caitlin for the thumbnails and how she gets the tweets out. Appreciate you, sis. You know that. All love to you as well. Extra special thanks always for these episodes. Listen, you guys all know the drill. Pong still Xbox, Pong still Twitter. Tomorrow Xbox Ultimate, I'll be there. And then of course Saturday morning it's Living Split Screen. Split Screen is all one word. Myself, my brother from another Steel Rain are going to talk about all this craziness and who knows what else we're going to get into but that's every Saturday morning, 3+ hours. Buckle up, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 o'clock Central Time. Living split screen. Tell a friend, bring a friend, because we are still on mission 1K. We are getting close to 900, so we are about to break through, I think. But our turnout has been awesome. New people jumping in all the time. So please stop on in and check us out Saturday morning. And then, of course, Saturday nights, the Shop Podcast, PTK Blams channel. Again, talk about finally getting the growth that PTK deserves. Huge numbers on Saturday nights. It's the place to be. PTK, Fuzzy, myself. This week, we always have amazing guests. Most week, 80% of the time we have guests. PTK has lined up the one, the only Kay Asante will be joining us to deep dive all the nonsense that has been happening, all the fun information we've got over the past couple of weeks with this deal. Listen, it's going to be a great time Saturday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Central Time. Again, the Shop Podcast, PTK Blams channel. It's the golden age of gaming, people. It really, really is. There's so much to play Diablo. But there's more than just Diablo. But if you're enjoying Diablo like Mav and I are, we understand, okay? But there is a lot to be playing right now. I was looking at the Game Pass. There's a lot of games I got downloaded I want to get back to. But man, Diablo's so damn good. Anyways, Golden Age is here, folks. You got to believe me at this point. So get out there, play what you love what you play. Have a great Friday. Have a great start to your weekend. I'm going to talk to you all real soon. Have a good night, everybody. Mav, get us out of here, brother.
Peace out, everyone. Have a fantastic night. Bye-bye.